Welcome back, my fellow Westorians. It's another Monday, another review, spoiler-free, as all Mondays are. Our spoiler-filled episodes are Saturdays at 3, if you didn't know. We're halfway through the season now. This episode is called We Light the Way. A lot of new plot lines introduced, a lot of battle lines drawn, and we say goodbye to several of the actors, but not several of the characters. Only one character actually died this episode, but surely there'll be more. Last week, for our spoiler episode, we had Direwolf City. This week we'll have Dr. Kavita Finn, who is a medievalist, so that should be a lot of fun. A little bit different than our usual style of guest. We're all sure to learn something, so make sure you tune in for that. Also, make sure to watch our synopsis episodes before each live stream. They're first released as audio only. The video takes a little longer to get out, but usually by the end of Monday, the video is up. You can check that out to prepare yourself for the week-long discussions about this episode. There's always so much to say, so it pays to kind of get a handle on it all first, and that's the point of the synopsis. Shout out to Jeff Gnarly, the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' First Sword, and Dragon Lord Eric the Evening Shade, Lord of the Groves and Defender of Stygi, Rider of Ixodes Scapularis the Bloodthirsty, a dragon with purple scales and wings, with a red underside, black horns, and green eyes. Look at that last part, black and green. You know where that's headed. We've got a little plug to share with you. A friend of ours over at the Agora Podcast Network has put out a book. I want to make sure you all are aware of it, so check out this brief plug.
Let's see. Hold on. It's not playing.
Hello, Agora Podcast family. This is Dr. Gary Chahot. You might know me as the host of the French History Podcast, the show that tells the history of France from 3 million years ago to present. What you might not know is that I am also a fiction author. 2 years ago, my debut novel, The Maiden Voyage of New York City, was published, telling the story of a future post-flood NYC floating on the waves and the conspiracy to bring it down. Last month, my second novel, The Afghan Wedding, came out and tells the bizarre, darkly comedic story of Avisa Fatah, a young woman from the Desert of Death in western Afghanistan, whose wedding night is interrupted by a sudden firefight that ends with her disappearing and reappearing at a secretive U.S. military base at the South Pole. If you want to support indie fiction and my bizarre stories sound appealing to you, please check them out. Now, enjoy the show.
Well, that's fitting. Dr. Gary is the host of the History of France podcast, the French History podcast, rather, and he's a great guy. That sounds kind of familiar. A woman having unexpected violence at a wedding and doing some other Desert of Death. Yeah, that's pretty fitting. Right up our alley there. Let's start with our 3x3, as we usually do. But first, Sean, what are you drinking today? Anything special? Anything strange? Probably yes.
I just have this green drink.
And a black shirt. You are very... I
have all the colors in a shirt, to be fair.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, last week on our Facebook poll, which, as always, is a great place to join the discussion, where you can find creative terms like crispy coleslaw to refer to Criston Cole. Yes, or, other fun stuff like that. Last week, like I said, Millie Alcock, again, won our actor poll. 40% of the respondents picked her. 16% picked Emily Carey, and 14% picked Patty Considine. Honorable mention to Billy the Kid Blackwood for his memorable brief performance. Yeah. You can also join us on Discord, where we have great discussions going as well. Pick whichever is your preferred method, or both, if you like that. I'll start with the highlight performance. I'm going to say Emily Carey again. I think this is my third time picking her. I'm just very enamored of her way of barely contained emotion, the way she projects subtle emotions that she's clearly trying to keep control of, but can't fully keep control of. And this episode, she stepped out a little more. We saw her in a little bit more take charge mode, being the queen, right? And actually dominating and taking everyone's attention, interrupting her husband. and being not at all apologetic for it. It was pretty cool. Sorry to see her go, though. Apparently we won't, unless we get flashbacks. That's the last we'll see of her. So I wanted to give her one last bit of praise there. What about you, Shea?
I'm going to say Emily Carey again, specifically for her upset in the rain face, which like both made me feel for her and being sad that Otto left, but also made me laugh at her a little bit because it was just a very extreme face. So I appreciated it. Yeah, she's a very serious person. The character is very serious, so she felt that pain of, because it wasn't just the pain of losing her father, but her role in it, right? Like she blames herself in part for it. So yeah, really wore that emotion well. Good call. Sean, what about you? Are you also picking Emily Carey, or do you have someone else to go with?
I am.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm picking her too.
3
yeah,
for 3.
She did release some emotions this time, right? Crying there with her father in the rain, and she also, as you were saying, something I appreciate is her kind of. You could see the emotions are there, but she's trying to control them. And like it was just last episode, we saw a little anger come through when she was talking to Rhaenyra, right? But this time when she's talking to Criston Cole, she actually turned away from him to not reveal the emotions that were coming through. Yeah. That was a really great moment, a great scene. And I also want to point out, just like almost every other episode, it's close. It's not like she's good and the others suck. It's really close between her and Millie Alcock and Patty also. I think that they all did. I won't begrudge anyone picking Matt Smith either. I think he does I think he may get cooler scenes, if that makes sense. So it might be a little easier to pick him sometimes.
Yeah, he's probably the least prominent this episode.
Yeah. I think Fabian Frankel did an amazing job as well. Like you can really see like the exact.
Criston
Cole. Yeah, you can just see the moments when his heart like just breaks.
Yeah, it's like Ralph from The Simpsons, right? You can pinpoint the moment where his heart splits in two. Ouch. Yeah. Great acting all around as usual. Okay, so highlight plot scene moment. I think that's the first time we all picked the same character. I think we've had two before. I don't know that we all picked the same.
Yeah,
one
I think
before.
you're right.
I think it is. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Good job, Emily Carey. Highlight plot scene. I'm gonna say Driftmark. So much scenery. It was very book accurate, which is always a big plus for me and for a lot of us. That had the causeway, which is supposed to be part of its construction. We read about that in the book. When tide is low, you can cross it. When tide is high, you can't. It's a little river run-ish where the level of water affects the situation with the castle and whether the causeway can be seen. It's also a little bit like that miniature castle that Bran and Mira and Jojen hid at when the Free Folk raiders were trying to get to them and they couldn't find their way across the causeway because it was hidden by darkness and water, and so they just gave up. But similar kind of concept, something that's in the real world.
Yeah, I think they had that problem when they were filming this in reality, that the tides
wouldn't cooperate.
Yeah, they had some stuff float away and stuff like that. I remember specifically during the filming process last year or whatever, seeing like a series of really funny photos of like something getting drawn away. Yeah, and like everyone off. Like the crew members are like and they're running after it and trying to stop like the tides from taking it.
It is called Driftmark, so stuff just drifts away. Yeah,
I did seem to remember in one of the behind the scenes bits that I saw where they filmed the crab feeder stuff, where they started to film the crab feeder stuff out there, and they ended up just building a beach on a set because it was less hassle to build a beach than to actually film because of the tide coming in.
Yeah, they needed to control the daylight and the weather and all that. Yeah, it's wild to think about. Yeah, that it's easier to build a fake beach than to use the real one. Like, really? Yep, really. Shay, what about you? What was your highlight moment?
My highlight moment was Lena Velaryon. I've said it in the past, but here she is again. I could have done with more of her. I expected to maybe see a little more of her, but I'll take what I can get. And we got her greeting Rhaenyra and then them going off to breakfast together, which was a nice little moment for me because I can fill in a lot of gaps in my own head. Like just having the scene where we're like, oh no, like they're friends and gonna become friendlier. I can fill the rest in. That's fine. But also the scene of her and Damon as well. Like we had a few scenes with Lena. She's a fan favorite and one of my favorites. So.
It seems like Damon was a bit taken by her, and why not? That is an extremely lovely person.
Yeah, I mean, she's
wow.
making eyes at him across the table.
It's
like,
not a one-way
like, you see that
flirt there. That's a two-way street.
I mean, think about it. We saw in episode 2 or whatever, when we met Lena as her younger self, we saw that she was really into dragons and dragon riders, and then here we go, her talking to Damon, and she's like, "Oh, a Targaryen prince, a dragon rider."
She's like,
I
should be really into you. She's like, "Am I?" Yes, I am.
Yeah, she's like, gave him the little barbs and all that. No, so I'm excited to see more of Lena going forward.
It was the kind of like frontal banter where she's like keeping pace with him, not at all like overwhelmed by his presence, like treating him like an equal, which is. He doesn't get that a lot.
Interesting that was, I don't know if she was matching wits with him. I don't know how to say it exactly, but Rhaenyra was also, right? She took the lead. Like, why don't you pull out your sword and go hack down and take me now? Challenging him.
That was cool.
I got a flurry of thoughts here, like just thinking, I'm sure everything will work out great with the Damon Lena or Lena relationship.
Everything.
It reminds me of someone, a tweet that I saw. I wish I knew who to give it credit to, but it was, it was like, Damon every episode, and it's the image of the Allstate guy that wreaks havoc. The guy from
the guy from 30 Rock. Yeah. Sean, what was your pick?
Mine was the conversation. By the way, it was tough because there were several that I really loved, several moments. And almost all just like these conversations, like the one with Lionel Strong and Viserys.
Yeah. About legacy?
About the idea of his legacy or whatever. That was really good. But the one that wins it for me was his son, Larys Strong.
Oh, yeah.
And Alicent in Godswood.
That was
really clever. Yeah, he was like so perfectly tactful. But she still kind of saw through, what's your mission? What are you trying to tell me here? And he did a good job of both fishing and planting, if that makes sense. He's trying to get information, but also plant information. And it's a little ambiguous to me whether or not he's supposed to be sinister. I want to think he's a good guy and an ally, but maybe there's even some question whether or not Alicent is a good guy. So being an ally to her might not. I don't know. I'm sure the show is trying to make it tough for us to tell. I'm sure a lot of people have read the books, maybe already have their minds made up.
Notable that this is happening in front of a werewood heart tree again too. That's Deal. Well, we'll have more to say about him. That was we'll definitely have more to say
very
about
intriguing and telling, interesting, well performed, well written scene. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I totally agree with you. I came close to picking that one as well. I'm glad you did. But yeah, well, like I said, we'll come back to that shortly.
Can I give another shout out to my other highlight scene?
Yeah.
Was the scene where they addressed the Valerian Targaryen naming decision
laying all that out
with Corlys and Viserys and Rhaenys, and then it leading into the
details.
Yeah, details. Them actually working out the details. Something that as podcasters we've gotten that question countless times, and I've had to explain how that works countless times, and here the show just did that work for us, so that was really cool. Confirming something that like we all just was like, yeah, that just makes perfect sense, but here they laid it out.
It's in an episode full of bad assumptions, which I think is one of the main themes of the episode. This was one of the few things that was not taken for granted. All that detail you're describing right now. Corus is like, well, let's work out these details first. There's some even he made bad assumptions. Pretty much everyone did. All the main characters made some bad assumptions, but that was one thing as a notable exception to the rule of bad assumptions in this episode. He was like, well, let's clarify all this. And yeah, you're right. It worked super well because, like Ashay said, a lot of us needed clarification on that too.
I got to point out, though, I'm still a little suspicious because this is an agreement that they just made with very few people around, most of whom might be dead by the time this matters.
Yeah.
Good point.
And so,
I'll note that Lionel Strong was there. The Hand of the King was there in the room.
He may pass that info on.
Yeah, I would like to think that Lionel would make sure this was written down, that this is recorded in some way, but we don't see that happen. We don't know that happened.
Right, like make sure, just because it's agreed to doesn't mean everyone, will be adhered to.
I would also like to think that Rhaenyra doesn't hook up with Harwin, now making Lionel look as biased as Otto. And so if he comes forward with this rule, it's like, oh, of course you would say that or not say that.
Yeah. That would cause some compromise.
I think it's the same problem with Rhaenyra. By the time this decision that's been made now matters, the people who agreed on it might not be around, right?
I mean, you're onto something there, because that's exactly what caused Otto to be compromised, basically. I mean, he more walked into it himself. He pushed his daughter into that, whereas in your scenario, you're saying you're not ascribing Lionel's intent to Harwin and Rhaenyra at all, but it would still look bad for him if it happened, even whether he set it up or not. Good point. Highlight dragon moment. I'm just going to say there weren't a lot of dragons in this one. There were dragons that were pretty notable. I'm going to say just the array of the dragons in the distance with the ships. It was just so grand and glorious. Like the Velaryons really making their big play with the black sails. That's really notable, by the way. That's expensive as heck. Dyed sails. That's a lot of fabric. Sails are real expensive.
And a lot of dye.
Yeah, a lot of, exactly. Those are expensive. Of course, not as expensive as dragons, probably. But hey, it just goes to show this whole thing is just the wealth and power on display is top level, top notch. We haven't seen this kind of display before, and that's what Viserys was aiming for. And the Velaryons were apparently keen to keep up the appearances along with him. So that's good stuff. Ashay, what do you think?
They made a bold entrance into court. They also made a bold entrance into King's Landing.
Yeah, they really did. Full pomp and circumstance, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say that I put Meleese up on the screen, so getting a proper shot of Meleese with Rhaenys atop her was a highlight for me. I was expecting to see one more dragon here, so the dragons were more disappointing to me than anything, I have to say.
Yeah.
But the jury's not out with what they'll do with that yet, so I won't be disappointed forever.
Yeah, we know it's coming. Sean, what about you?
I might have a slightly contrarian opinion, but it was a highlight to me that there weren't really any dragons. This show is awesome without dragons. I prefer the intrigue and the drama to fire and blood, if you will. So I was okay with it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and certainly this was a great episode, and you're right. You could take out those dragons, and it wouldn't have a big impact.
Sean likes the Game of Thrones more than fire and blood.
Well, you're not the only one. But they did look sweet.
Yeah, it was cool seeing Sea Smoke next to Meleese as, Laenor. We've seen Sea Smoke before, but it was our first real good look at Meleese, Rhaenys' dragon.
It's definitely neat that the queen who never was rides a dragon called the Red Queen.
Yeah.
She did not give that dragon that name. The Red Queen had the name before her. She is not Meleese's first rider.
I will say, contrarian as I may be, it was pretty cool, this sort of dive. You really got a feel for how fast they could move. And it was, I don't know how to say this, probably the mechanics realistically of a dragon flying don't work out aerodynamically, whatever, but they made me believe it. So that's
right
really
on.
Good.
Yeah. So like I said earlier here, assumptions leading to unexpected, generally awful results are a big part of this episode. People filling in the blanks, a lot of people with what they expect or want, rather than maybe giving it more cautious thought and thinking about it from other people's perspectives. Otto and Rhaenys both assume the realm won't follow Rhaenyra. That they will rise against her. Many of them will. Otto assumes even worse, that Rhaenyra will have no choice but to kill Alicent's children, and that's important framing. One of the reasons he gets through to his daughter finally on that is that he's not trying to get her to believe that your best friend's going to kill your kids. And it's like, she's going to have no choice but to kill your kids. It's not that she's going to want to, which Alicent has trouble accepting, but she's like, look, the politics, the scenario will demand that she kills your children. It's not that she's going to want to. She's going to have no choice. So he assumes that's going to happen. And she begins to believe that too. Sean?
Part of that assumption is that she's determined to be queen over anything else.
Yes,
like that she wouldn't choose her friendship or her morals or whatever else over being queen, which may end up being true at least. But I did have that thought when he's like, look, you either prepare for Aegon to rule or you cleave. Interesting to use the word cleave because that word has two opposite meanings.
Yes.
To split apart or to glue together. And I remember when he said that, I remember thinking like, I'm not sure that's the only two options. I feel like that's the nature of compromise. There's got to be some other option in there. He might not see it, or he might not want Alicent to pursue a compromise because he doesn't think it's likely to work or whatever. But
I think failure there's too much at risk, too much at stake. Yeah.
It reminded me when Corlys said, when there's a storm coming, you either sail through it or sail around it. Like, well, can't you turn back or hold in place? There's no way that's the only options,
Yeah, and I almost picked that as my favorite moment because I also thought Rhys Ifans, like, he had a really small role this episode, but that moment of his imploring his daughter was just really well done. He just really communicated it so adamantly and heartfelt, and just, look, this is your kids' lives at stake here. This is not playtime. This is, you got to believe me now. Now, do you believe you made a mistake? You're seeing the consequences for it. You got to believe me from now on. Yeah, so that's a really big thing. Now, Allison's other assumption was that this situation with Damon and Rhaenyra was happening, so she brings in Criston Cole, assuming that maybe he can fill her in, and he assumes she's talking about him. That was really well done. This could have been a sitcom if it was under much different circumstances. Like, oh, you were talking about, oh, you slept with him. Oh my God. It could have been comedy.
Oh, I was laughing.
It was anything but. Yeah, we were laughing a little bit. Like, how is this going to play
As a defense mechanism, I was laughing.
Yeah. But it was just like, you really could see this being a comedy plot, but but nope. Prior to that, Allison assumed, as part of the Otto situation, she assumed that her father's informer, she's like, okay, well, my father wouldn't lie, and Rhaenyra wouldn't lie. Damon would lie, so it must be the informer that's mistaken or lying. That's her assumption based on her preconceived notions about who could and couldn't lie. Of course, she was wrong about that. Cole assumes Rhaenyra will run away with him, or at least that this is an acceptable suggestion. Rhaenyra is like, wait, what? And she assumes he'll be cool with just having a continued affair that they keep a secret, which he very much is not cool with either. Laenor and Joffrey assume Criston Cole and Rhaenyra have basically the same arrangement they have. They assume that, and they also assume that Criston Cole is her lover. That's, by the way, an assumption as well, which they did. They did get that right, but the assumption.
But that's a jump. But like the leap from like, this is her lover to let me go talk to this Kingsguard knight, as it, like, that is very confident in his read of a person.
Yeah, that's a little too bold. Yeah, like, it was almost arrogant. Like, I don't like, he wasn't threatening him. He wasn't like trying to blackmail him or anything, but Cole might have taken it that way because in his state of mind.
Is that right? I don't think he was, but he might have been, and
I don't
easily
think
Criston could have taken it that way.
Totally.
When he's like, hey, if we keep this secret, everyone can benefit. That's kind of like tacit threat. You better keep this secret.
Yeah.
In
I do think he took it the wrong
head, his
way.
paranoid head, but in Joffrey's head, I really think it was truly just like, oh, you're the lover of my lover's, lover.
Yeah, he's like,
you're
you're
my metamor
we
type
got
thing.
in common.
Yeah, like we both have a vested interest in this. Let's talk about it.
We're both gonna get what we want out of this. Just keep each other's secrets. Yeah.
There's just no world in which Joffrey Lonmouth thought that this would lead to a fight or to him being killed or like. I don't think
he's naive, if not arrogant.
Yeah. He thought he was doing right. Like, he thought he was playing the role of sworn protector, like protecting their relationship as well as like their lives. And he thought he was speaking to someone else who was approaching this with the same thing. Like, I want to protect my partner here and do my job, but also we get what we want. Yeah.
Yep.
Sigh.
we're going on a bit of a tangent on this one particular thing, but it's also Criston. Shoot, I lost my thought. We'll get back to it. I'm sure we'll talk about this more. Sorry.
Yeah, we will.
So Corlys doesn't, as we said, Corlys didn't assume with regard to the details of the succession, but he does assume Laenor will father kids. He assumes that his son will get over being gay, which obviously that's not going to happen. And he also assumed his wife wanted justice for being passed over. And she's like, nah, I'm over that. Like, especially not these circumstances. Now you just put us into the Game of Thrones. All our kids are now at risk. We're at risk. Like, I didn't actually really want that, So that may not work out so well. Rhea assumes Damon is there to kill her. Damon says nothing that entire scene, and he may have been there to kill her, but it's definitely ambiguous. More on that later. Melos assumes his treatments are better than the ones Orwell's using. Orwell's like, look, man, I got these tinctures. Maybe try these poultices. And he's like, no. That won't work,
Or he might not be assuming; he might be actively denying a better treatment.
That's also true.
But wonder about that.
You're right. Yeah. That may be more intentional than assumption, but
I will note
it's an open question.
That Orwell leaves Lionel Strong with, I guess, some milk of the poppy because he says to help the king sleep, and then he gives it to Lionel, and then Lionel gives it to Viserys. So Orwell is still helping a little.
Yeah, and that is Orwell, by the way. If y'all missed that. You'll
not Melos.
Book fans.
Yeah, the darker skinned, younger Maester is Orwell, and the older Maester who sucks, who I put on screen, is Melos.
Yeah. So another one is Jason Lannister. This is a very minor example. Jason Lannister, assuming his jokes about women getting ready will be well received, but he's not very funny. So, but it's funny when people aren't funny because we can make fun of them. Sworn Protector is obviously a big part of this episode as well. Who's protecting who and from what? And what is the duty of a Sworn Protector? And of course, this gets into the long-standing theme of love versus duty. Love being the death of duty. A very old theme from Game of Thrones. Jon Snow and Aemon are the first ones to put voice to it, but it's all over Game of Thrones. Ned and Lyanna and Rhaegar, and it's just everywhere. So it's a hallmark Game of Thrones.
The love versus duty theme is second only to the love versus booty theme.
Yeah, that's always very prominent as well. Taking sides is a big part of this episode. The factions start to form. Some people just are, when the battle lines start to get drawn, some people are eager to take a side because they've already made up their mind. Other people are pulled one way or the other because things eventually become, if you're not with us, you're against us. And neutrality is no longer acceptable. We're not there yet, but you can start to see those signs building. With that in mind, legacy is also important. Mostly at this point, it's important to Viserys, but it's also important to people like Corlys and to a lesser extent some of the other lords and ladies around, but they're the ones who were most particularly bringing it up. And Larry Strong, bringing him back right into it. His point about nature finding a way. There's a lot of ways that plays out, like Damon being out of place in the Vale. He didn't find a place in the Vale. He may still be trying to. These marital arrangements, finding a way. And even though they're not working out so well at first either, it's a similar kind of concept in a human venue rather than a plant from Bravos growing in King's Landing in a temperature and climate that it wasn't intended for. A lot of metaphor there. Tell us your favorite themes and patterns, as well as your favorite moments from the episode. Put them in the comments or comment afterwards if you're not watching live. We'd love to hear from you. Shout out to Joanna Robinson as we go into the Vale. She noted that this scene was filmed in Derbyshire, the same location Wesley and Buttercup have one of their famous scenes from The Princess Bride. So that's cool. Not exactly the same level of romance.
I was going to ask if that we could see a castle of sorts in the background in that scene. Do we know what castle that's supposed to be?
Probably Runestone.
Probably Runestone.
She's probably just right by her house at the time, her castle.
He probably knew she'd be returning along a certain way and was just waiting for her there. That's my guess.
So she must have failed at getting a deer then, if she was on the way back home and almost there and didn't have a deer.
She did have a pheasant though. You can see it kind of hanging out. Okay. She got something, yeah. So a funny thing about the runic armor, we were excited about this runic armor, and it does look really cool. It looks very cool. And we were talking on Saturday about how maybe David J. Peterson did these runes. Shout out to Zionis on Twitter, who is Zionius. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Zionius. There's another I in there. Who's also keeper of the SSM.
Yeah.
This is taken straight from the Wikipedia page on runes. Literally.
Yeah, literally, if you search on Google and go to the Wikipedia page, runes, you will recognize these runes. It's just really funny.
I think these are the same runes from like the Ultima games as well. Ultima 4 and 5 and all that. The Ultima Lord British and all that. So they skimped a little bit on this, but I find that amusing rather than, something
it looks authentic.
It looks
really
cool.
Looks like
Like
runes,
it does the job.
Maybe they skimped on the source, but not in the presentation. It looks
it looks
good way
cool.
to put it. Yeah, it looks awesome.
It was too funny.
So, as I said, he doesn't say a word this whole scene, just like at the Stepstones and maybe one or two other times. He's cowled, but she knows who he is right away. She's like, we're all sitting there wondering, like, does she know who that is? We know who that is. And she's like, hello, husband. Like, okay, yep, she knows who that is. And
it took me a moment to recognize who it was.
Oh, okay.
I went through a moment of like, I wonder who this is. Who could it possibly be? Oh, it's Damon.
Yeah, I was like, right, of course.
It took like 1 second for all that to click, but that is what I went through, yeah.
So it's really ambiguous what his intentions were initially. It's not ambiguous how it ended, of course. She accuses him of being unable to finish, that they never consummated their marriage, which comes right back to it's a third example of his sexual dysfunction, But Rhea,
I think it's like the 7th or 8th example, just so you know.
Okay, yeah, it could be. But Rhea's knowledge of it would predate perhaps all these other examples because their marriage would have been a while back. So the fact that they never even consummated the marriage is pretty interesting. What did you think of this scene, Sean? What do you think his intentions were? It's definitely capturing that. You haven't read Fire and Blood, but you can see how this captures the ambiguity that we keep referring to that's in that book of multiple sources. In Fire and Blood, in fact, it's not even hinted at that he did it. He was in the Stepstones at war when she died in Fire and Blood. So it's kind of like, how could he have even been involved?
I mean, he could have been involved. He could have sent someone.
But that's harder to do, and it's it's like sending someone into unfamiliar territory to get away with murder of a lady in her home court. Like, that's hard to pull off. It's possible. There's definitely no way you can say it couldn't have happened. But the idea that he went there personally in the book is pretty much off the table, because he was at war. And the Stepstones is really... Like, they would have seen his dragon if he flew there, like, it's really hard to pull that off without getting noticed, like his presence being seen. Anyway, setting that aside, we're not here to debate Fire and Blood, but go ahead, Sean.
On one hand, I want to kind of agree with you there, but on the other hand, I feel like it would be hard for Alicent to meet with a king for months and not be noticed, but it seemed to have been, so I feel like if he wanted to, he could have found a way.
This is meeting around, like, in a castle where they both are supposed to be. Damon just being in the Vale would be news. Yeah. Because he's supposed to be in the Stepstones.
But like, if he could have landed the dragon 30 miles away.
But how do you expect to not be seen with the dragon? Like, there's only one Caraxes. Like, that his dragon is.
I really do think that he could easily arrive somewhere on Caraxes secretly and park and all that. Like, I don't think that is enough to stop it.
Oh, I'm not saying it's enough to stop it. I'm saying that's a huge distinction between meeting in private and the Red Keep, where they both live already.
I will say I think that it's less believable for that to be secret, for the Red Keep meetings to have stayed a secret, than it would have been for Damon to secretly fly on Caraxes and park on like a.
Well, I don't think they were secret though in the Red Keep. They were just secret from like some people, like Rhaenyra didn't know. Well, but that doesn't mean everybody didn't.
Well, I guess my point, I felt that Corlys and Rhaenys should have known. I felt that they should have contacts and be able to find out. That is the person that I think should have known.
Similarly, someone might have seen a dragon land, but not known it was Damon's dragon.
Or not known, had anyone that they could talk to about it. One
way or the other. The point is that these things are unlikely, but could have happened. But what I thought about it, his intentions or whatever, try to get back to that. I assumed that he was there to kill her. That's what I thought. That through the course of the scene, when she sort of had that realization, he kind of lowered his brow a little and like, it kind of got dark. I feel like she realized what the play for him to make was, and that's why he's there. He's making this play. But
why is he so passive about it though? All he does is grab for her reins. He doesn't pull his weapon, anything like that. That's a big part of the ambiguity. Like, I even wondered if there was
Sean. I want to hear the rest.
I even wonder if there was like a mystical element, or if maybe he had, in the same way that like Loras took advantage of the mountain by having some scent, having a mare in heat to distract the horse. I wonder if he did something to the. Anyway, it became a little more. It came a little more clear that it wasn't clear, and the behind the scenes when they talked about it, when he said that why he showed up is hard to know, but. By the way, I watched it with our friend Randy, and he, after we watched it, talked about it, and he similarly thought, he didn't even think it was obvious that, or clear or certain, that Damon smashed her skull in with the rock. I thought that was for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Why else would he pick up the rock and walk back, and he cut to like a fish head being chopped?
Like I said that her head was bashed in later.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I have to accept, if nothing else, based on what the showrunners are telling me, that he wasn't definitively showing up with that intention. But it makes me wonder what the heck else was his intention.
Well, he was told to go there. I mean, he was like, you have to go home to the Vale. So he went home to the Vale. I mean, I don't know.
But he doesn't like fly in on a dragon and assert himself. He shows up in the woods in disguise. That's
that's part of the ambiguity. Like, why did he do that? But it leads to the suggestion that he was there to kill her. But
I think that he had an inkling in his brain, like, I'm maybe gonna kill my wife today, but like he still wasn't 100% in it. Like even when he showed up, like he's like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna do this thing, but I don't really want like he felt. I think he was mixed up about it, and then Rhea went and like poked at him, and like he like steeled him to be like, okay, no, this is what I'm gonna do. But I do think that it was. And so in that way, I think you can still call it an impulsive decision. Like he had it 100% made up his mind that he was killing her until she needles him some more.
Like he didn't have a specific plan on how to kill her. He was like, I think I want to kill her.
Yeah.
But then the opportunity just kind of presented itself. And, you know, like I wouldn't say that was him murdering her because she goaded him. No, she goaded him into killing her because she was going to starve to death lying there with a broken neck. And it was better to die at his hand than to just suffer.
I would say I would still call it murder. I wouldn't call it like premeditated exactly murder.
It might be a mercy killing.
I call that a mercy killing, though you could still accuse him of being there to kill her in the first place and still say the whole thing was he had murder on his mind. I'm just...
I would say
the actual killing blow is mercy.
I still think he caused her death.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know that he intended for that horse to rear up. He may have just intended to cut her throat some other way. It's entirely possible. But that would look like it was done. See, that's the other part of the ambiguity. It's like he couldn't have, I don't know if he could have gotten away with that. Like, this looks like an accident. A cut throat, you can't really...
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go strongly on the record and say, in my opinion, this was murder.
Okay.
I will say that. We'll disagree here.
I will say that whatever it was, it seems like they wanted it to be at least a little ambiguous. Like, even if he definitely showed up to kill her and did do something to the horse to call you all that, how does anyone actually know that, right?
Yeah.
People can only assume, and they might be very confident in their assumption, but they would never win in a court of law.
No.
There is no evidence.
Maybe they don't need to if they just challenge him in the streets with a sword, I guess.
Yeah. Zero evidence he did this.
But if you challenge him at the table of the king, you might need a little more evidence, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's an important point on that. Now, Corley says, he hints that it was... something's up with that. He's like, sure is strange that this very capable rider just broke her neck falling off her horse. And then he just kind of lets it go. But it's Lionel and Viserys that are there for that implication. And then when Uncle Gerald comes up to accuse Damon, it's Lionel and Viserys are the only two there again. And Viserys gives Damon a real long look after that moment. He's like, did he kill Lady Royce? Did he do that? Is this accusation accurate?
I wonder if he's got like a new level of suspicion in him now after what happened with Otto. Like he's lost some sense of innocence in the world or whatever. It's like, man, I just have to be suspicious of people who I thought were close to me, people I thought I could trust.
That Uncle Gerald, something seemed a little off about that guy, didn't it? Like he seemed like he was a little shady. Like he didn't seem like the good guy in this scenario. He seemed like maybe he's got his own play for Runestone. Like even when he met Rhea out front, he's like, "Hello, cousin." You know, she didn't give him like the warm greeting. Like she was like, "What are you doing here, man? Like get away." Like, yeah, I prefer to ride alone. You know.
I was suspicious of him at first, in that I thought that he was going to have an involvement with Damon in getting rid of her, but that clearly was not the case. So I'm less suspicious of him, knowing that he seems genuinely like, no, that wasn't cool. Like, yeah, that benefited me in the long run, perhaps, but that wasn't cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think that, just his manner, something. Just I think he's playing like trying to be off on purpose. Like he's got his own scheming going on.
I will say, on one hand, when I rewatched that interaction at the beginning, they didn't seem particularly close. But when he shows up at court, he did seem like it was in a personal front. That was my cousin. Now you can't have that. But it also seemed odd for him to be taken so off guard by the implications of what was going to happen with the estate. Like, he really didn't even consider that?
Should,
is he playing dumb, or is he really that dense?
No, he shouldn't be. No, that's Damon is just wrong. That is not how the law works. So that's why
Damon's
he's surprised.
Pushing for it to work that way. Maybe Damon's just like flipping a table, like you're accusing me of one thing, but I'm going to try to take extra.
Yeah,
like, maybe I don't get that, but you're definitely not accusing me.
Gerald's
of
worried that Damon will get his way because he's a dragon riding prince, even though the law does not.
Yeah, no, I think this is a way for Damon to cow Gerald to not accuse him. He's saying, hey, look, if you push this more, I'm gonna push back, and you might not like that you don't end up with Runestone, because look at me as the king's brother.
Yeah, he's like, you want to keep Runestone, you better back off. Yeah, I like that take.
That makes me think of a question and a joke. One, he said, do we think that he is going back to the Eyrie or to the Vale? Like, is he still banished? Did he just come back for the wedding and he's going back?
Well, I'll answer
home?
that with
Or
whether this addressed it or not. Like, I think in my head canon, we're about to have a 10-year time jump, and in that time, yeah, Damon's gonna go talk to Jane Eyre, and she's gonna say, "No, you don't get this." In the book, in Fire and Blood, he petitions her for Runestone.
Okay.
And this was a little shout out to that, him bringing up the idea of doing that to Gerald. But I think it's perfectly reasonable to imagine that off screen in this 10-year time jump we're about to hit, Damon is going to go petition for Runestone and not get it. And that's the end of that.
And not only did not get it, but Lady Jane is like, GTFO.
No. Yeah.
She's like, you're not welcome in the Vale. So he gets he gets exiled to the Vale, and then the Vale exiles him out.
Yeah.
So... Oh yeah, I was realizing you might have to spoil stuff to tell me, but also realize there's a lot. It's difficult to speculate on what's going to happen with a 10-year time jump.
Yeah, so we don't know what
we're going to get.
We don't know what we'll see on screen that would have been in the 10-year time jump, or what will have actually happened. But
this may get played out very differently. We're just small
that's-
spoiler.
yeah.
But it made me wonder if he was going back there. What was he going back for? If he's not going back there, is he staying at home? Is he still banished by Viserys? I don't know. Anyway, all that reminded me of The Office when Dwight was mad at I think it was at Jim. It's like shunned, unshunned, unshunned. Viserys is shunning and unshunning. Like, you're banned. You're just back. You're banned again.
Yeah, he just walked in like, they'll give me a seat. My brother doesn't want to cause a disturbance. He'll let me sit down. Yeah, sure enough. That was one of the assumptions as well. That's one of the ones that worked out. He's like, yeah, he'll just let me back in. Damon continue. I really like how Damon's character is written, in that it fits the ambiguity of Fire and Blood. He responds to accusations consistently with contempt. It's like, your accusation is irrelevant. Doesn't matter if I'm guilty, because that would imply my actions can be unjust. I can do what I want. I'm the prince. I do what I want. There is no judgment of me. He can't. He's not going to protest innocence, because that would imply that he's submitting to judgment in the first place. So he's like, no, I do what I want. Period. I won't respond to your accusations because they have no merit, because I'm above all that. And that enables people to fill in the blanks with what really happened, because he never responds to the accusations. So they're like, oh, he must have done it. That's why he's not, protesting his innocence. And like, oh no, that's just, yeah. So that really fits in well with the historical sources have to just make up his motives or invent, which is how real history works a lot too. So Otto and Laris and Alicent, let's talk about them briefly. We talked about Otto's emphatic talk with his daughter. We light the way in the rain here. And it's the same thing that Alicent is said, or that Rhaenys says to Corlys. They both basically say the same thing, that the realm won't accept a woman. War is coming, period. Except that Otto, of course, includes the part you mentioned, Sean. You have to pray for her mercy or fight her. That's really all there is to it. They also both point out that Viserys won't have a long life, that he may live quite a bit longer, but there's no way he's going to be an old man because of the way how bad his health is. They both recognize that, and they may be the only two that state that out loud. Other people probably realize it, but pretty important though.
It is another thing that's kind of, I want to say, kind of a false assumption. We have a little spoiler just from the previews next week. We know Viserys is still there.
Yeah.
And if that's 10 years from now, maybe the first 5 minutes of the episode are not 10 years from now. I don't know how it's going to go, but he's got to be 50-ish now. And so
after 10 years, no, he's not. After 10 years, he'll be 50-ish.
How old is he now?
He's in his late 30s. He looks older than he is because of his health. He's not that old.
Well, I mean, the image of him at the council, he looked...
Yeah, it's his health.
30.
It's his health, man.
Well, I mean, you're saying at the council he was only, 17?
At the Great Council of 101?
Yeah, when he was already, his wife was already
pregnant with he was in his 20s
How
then.
old was he?
He was in his 20s.
All right, so then this story started 10 years after that, so he's in his 30s. And now it's already
No, he would have been in his early 30s then, and then now he's in his late 30s.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So 10 more years and he's in his late 40s, yeah. Yeah, he looks older than he is. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Like, yeah, and while Damon is not
sometimes
aging
it's
at all.
Sometimes deceiving because of the silver hair or whatever.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference between silver and gray.
I just assumed that he was like, so he was like in his young 20s when Rhaenyra was born.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe not even 20 yet. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. Rough. Small detail. Yeah. Either way, it fits though. Yeah.
Because Rhaenyra is like 17-ish right now.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if he's 37, he was 20 when she was born.
Yeah,
and...
that's normal.
Okay.
That's normal for these
Yeah,
princesses.
it's all normal.
Yeah.
It's not the timeline I thought we were on.
Okay.
I
yeah.
thought he was well into his 20s when she was born, when he was chosen to be king.
In Fire and
And he
Blood,
was
Damon
well
marries
into
Rhea
40s
Royce
now.
when he's 16, for example. That's
Yeah.
how long they've been married. So, like, a lot of time has passed.
But again, because this is the show, I would hesitate for us to put much stock into what the actual age is in this. I don't think it's terribly important, and it could be slightly different.
Yeah, that's why I'm not trying to give him a precise age.
He could
I'm
be
just saying,
old.
like,
He could
30.
be.
Yeah,
Well, he
yeah.
could be a little bit closer to what you're saying, Sean. Like, I think there is room for that to be the case, just based on things are different and the actor's older.
Yeah, yeah.
for what it's
I'm
worth.
guessing you're probably right to point out that he most looks the wrong age in the Great Council scene.
Yeah. I
Like, he
think
should be younger there. Maybe not a teenager, but he shouldn't look like Patty Considine.
Yeah.
That's probably when it's the most off.
Yeah.
So yeah, and Laris connecting these two scenes with Otto and Allison, Allison starts to realize just how right her father was, but not even fully until more information comes. Like he confronts her and says, "Look, I was right about Rhaenyra." And she comes to realize just how right he was. And then she comes to realize how right he was about other things, which is going to fuel her paranoia or cynicism or realism that he's right about her children being at risk. Once all those dominoes fall and she starts to believe her father, that means she has to believe his most important point, or the thing he's most emphatic about, which is that her kids are in danger. And that obviously changes her behavior massively, because once she's like, oh, my kids are in danger, she's a dutiful person. Her duty to her children, who's a mother, that's going to come first among all things. So, and here comes Laris. As you said, Sean, I'm glad you highlighted this scene. Talk about, making things a little worse. Pouring fuel on the fire. His voice comes as a surprise. Shout out to Joe Magician, big fan of the biggest fan of the Strongs that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
And he points out how at first it looks like Laris's voice is just coming from nowhere, as if from the weirwood. She's looking at the weirwood, and then a voice just comes, and she doesn't know who's there. So it kind of makes it seem like he has knowledge he shouldn't have, which is like, yeah, how did he know about the tea? How did he find that out? How did he know?
He's doing what I think the other characters should have been doing together. He's asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking tabs. Maybe even there is a network of spies set up. If Otto did that before he left and told his son, hey, talk to this maid, talk to this cook, see who goes in and out of this chamber. Otto might not have done it at the beginning, but realized he needed to be. And once he realized it, told someone else. And and even though it seems sort of, conniving or subversive or sinister, on a certain level, it's good for people to have information to work with. You can make better decisions. You can anticipate problems that are coming. If you're using this information to manipulate people, that's not quite as good.
So wait,
but if you use it to keep everyone informed, that's good.
Can I say, are you pro Laris Strong right now, Sean?
Right now, I am.
Okay.
Right, I recognize he might be sinister,
Okay.
but I feel like it seems like he has an intention of getting Allison to worry or know about the right things. And I think that's there's certainly maybe some bias for the sake of his family or something like that. But I feel like it seems right now to have at least potentially positive outcomes. It might have negative outcomes because everyone's going to make a bunch of stupid decisions like they have in all along, right? But if everyone made good, non-selfish decisions with the information they had, try to get all the information that was available rather than act on emotions or knee-jerk reactions.
Laris tells Allison this information, and she goes and makes a whole scene with her green dress. I'm like, what's she doing with this information that's good to me? I guess helping Criston not kill himself.
And he's the one who points out that she's in the green dress and what the significance of the green dress means. He's like, well, the High Towers make the flame on the High Tower green to go when they're going to war. And he's the one that put her on this path. So yeah, it depends on what you think his goal is there. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what
Otto
he's
kind of
doing.
put her on this path before he did. Otto said, hey, you need to get ready.
So why is a Strong helping her do that when his father replaced her, or his father replaced her father? So that's the part is like finding the connection between Otto and Laris is difficult because they shouldn't really not At least not right
there
now.
may not even be one, but it's still like, what do you, sorry, I don't mean to say like, what do you think? But I mean, just, I want to think for a second. What's the most sinister thing Loras could be angling for?
Starting a war on purpose? I don't know. I mean,
why would he want to do that?
I have no idea. I don't know why he's telling her anything.
So, but so when I think about it, I don't have any good reason to think of this character that's barely been featured has this master plan to start a war. And so what I feels more like a default is he's trying to help her out. He has this awareness that he wants to share with her.
But why would he want to do that? That's also a thing.
I think it's just
good motives need questioning. Good motives need questioning too.
True.
I think that he's trying to get in on the green side while his father and brother are getting in on the black side, so that they are able to play both sides, so that the strongs always come out on top, just like Mac and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
He's playing both
and I
sides.
think that he's using some simple information to test Alicent to see what her reaction will be. If she doesn't bite, then okay, Alicent and Rhaenyra are tight. I shouldn't have brought it up. This is a fine thing to bring up. But like, I think he's really is like a testing the waters and seeing how amenable she is to getting information from him.
He may, on some level, be looking out for his dad. He might be worried about what's brewing. Because remember, I did feel like he both was fishing for information and planting ideas. I think he was doing both. He wanted to know.
He said
how much
he
does
said
Alicent
you're
know.
going to need allies, And at first she's like,
Right.
she was resistant,
And it was such a clever way,
She's
right?
like,
When he says you're going to need allies, and she's like, I have plenty. He's like Rhaenyra.
Yeah,
like
smooth.
you kind of knew that she wasn't really an ally.
Smooth.
But then he didn't just follow that up as like a chide. He's like, you might not be able to count on her because she's sick. Like he not only has this plausible deniability as to why he would make that comment. It wasn't just like to poke at her, but then it also tests. Did she know about the pregnancy, the tea?
Yep.
Let me tell her and see how that changes things, And
let's compare him to some other intriguers.
Exactly. I agree with that, Sean, that he's just slowly giving her this information and seeing how she reacts and then going from there. But yeah, what is he? Yes.
So you ask, like, what might his angle be? Well, we've seen a couple different intrigue characters and what their roles have been. In the case of Littlefinger, who also spoke to people kind of like this, trying to see their reaction to things and not always clear what his motivations are. Well, Littlefinger at one point says, well, chaos is allowed, or someone like me is good at exploiting chaos. It might be something like that if we're looking for generic motivations for some intriguer. On the other hand, think about how he's talking. It's very blunted words used pointedly, or pointed words used bluntly. Like he's saying polite things, but they're very incisive. They're actually quite cutting.
Mm-hmm.
Like the implications of those words go far beyond what he's saying, and that's what he's aiming for. He's wanting her to hear the implications without saying the words, right?
He's saying them tactfully, and he's maintaining plausible deniability, but he's really getting to the heart.
Yeah, it's like aggressive tactfulness. Like he's trying to get at certain very important points here. Very critical.
I mean, sometimes it feels like
moments.
Sometimes it feels like he's saying something, and then he's like, "Oh, I gotta like really spell this out for her." Like
she's
there's
not
like
fully
this
getting
moment
it.
where he's like, she's whether willfully
I
or
agree.
through stupidity or what, but he's like, okay, she's not there yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to teach her a little
Which is why
more.
a great performance by the actor Matthew Needham as Loris, because you could really see the like layers there of his performing. Of him acting out things for Alicent's benefit.
It's very similar to the person his name rhymes with, Varys, who does the same kind of thing. When, like, remember what Varys says to Ned, he's like, it was so good of that squire to make sure the king had all the refreshment he needed while he was on his hunt, because the refreshment is how they got Robert to get too drunk. That kind of, it's the very same type of, like, leading them to the point without saying it. And... but with the intent of stirring up something.
To the question you're bringing up, though, it's hard in the series. I don't think they handled it well. Like where they went with Varys and Littlefingers and a bunch of characters are hard to like make sense of. Didn't necessarily jive with what happened in the beginning. I don't know, went off, jumped the shark tank or whatever. In the books, it's still not really clear. Like on some level, like okay, Littlefinger's ambitious. Maybe he's got some weird crush on Sansa or something like that, but we still don't really exactly know what his motivations are other than gain more power, which isn't especially inherently sinister. right? It's not like Viserys wants more power. He,
Corlys wants more power, but I do think that they are portraying it negatively to want that.
Thing of Harwin.
But I don't think it's a positive trait that they're showing in the show.
True, I do agree. Generally, it ends up being a symbol of corruption and arrogance and everything else. But I much prefer someone angling for power to do it by, whispering in people's ears to get them to realize what's going on around them, to angling for war and wanting to murder people. So I'm saying I think I would rather have Harwin right now if I could just be in charge. I would Larys. Sorry, I would put Larys. I'd rather him be king than Damon or Rhaenyra or Otto or almost anyone else.
I'll say
Lionel might be my first pick, actually.
Lionel. I will say Corlys, his his tunnel vision about having his family, his specifically Rhaenys' line, not even really his line on the throne, has not been a sympathetic or a likable trait in Corlys. That it's been to his detriment. Like, it has not benefited the realm for him to care so much about that. And Rhaenys is trying to get over it, and he won't let her get over it. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. And he's mixing up his family with it. I went into the show thinking he was going to be this heroic protagonist character, but he disappoints me almost every time he's on screen. He doesn't seem politically ready for what's going on around him. He doesn't control his emotions. He's assumes his son will grow out of being gay. He doesn't really listen to what his wife wants. He's constantly kind of disappointing me.
So we're on the record here. Sean supports Larys Strong and Criston Cole and his anti-Corlys Velaryon. That's what we've determined.
Criston Cole's
here.
got a notch against him now.
Okay, we'll get into. I'm super curious what your stance on Criston is, but we'll get into that soon.
Yeah, let's talk about Driftmark. That's our next location. We can talk a little bit about Corlys there. Possibly the most beautiful location we've seen yet. We already talked about the causeway. The interior has beautiful architecture. There's another model inside, kind of like.
Oh yeah.
The thing, kind of like Viserys' model. I kind of wish they talked about you got a cool model too. I like that. Your model's as cool as my Valyrian model. There's all these treasures around. There's this place called the Hall of Nine, which presumably refers to his 9 voyages and different things he got from different places, but it might also, or instead, refer to prior lords of Driftmark. The different
there might be 9
Driftmark.
Highlighted skulls as well.
Yeah.
But specifically, he has his 9 voyages.
I think 9's a little light for the number of lords in Driftmark, but it could work. So
those are just all the skulls they have left.
Maybe some of them were lost at sea, so they don't have those skulls. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going through a little procession of art from Corlys' Hall of 9, different treasures he's got, like a horse head and this cool engraved ivory, I guess.
There's a skull with a engraving on it too.
Oh yeah,
really
there was that. The skull
there was
also
cool.
A where's that?
4-foot seashell looking thing.
The
ammonite.
I wonder if that was something, a piece of art constructed, or if that was some natural thing that he found.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah,
too.
it's hard to tell. I tend to think of it as something he found, but
or supernatural thing that he found.
Supernatural thing that he found. Where is this?
So that's probably the same fireplace he talked to Damon at when he was sitting there chilling when they had in episode 2. I guess that would have been.
He's got this cool augury thing.
Yeah, kind of like the astrolab.
Yeah,
here's the skull with the writing and carvings on it. Just all sorts of stuff going on there. It looks kind of vaguely Aztec, maybe.
So I would be super curious to dig in and see where we think certain treasures came from in the actual world of Ice and Fire. But that'll be its own episode. But we have here's shots of the mural that we see that depicts his 9 voyages.
So
there's
cool.
Maps. Yeah, there's this hanging chandelier thing made of a bone ivory. This thing, there's so many cool.
Look at
things.
this map with you can see behind the journey in dots. Shows the.
So with this, there's there's some respect we might be able to be oh well, if it shows that he stopped at Merak, then maybe something came from there. I think we can piece together some stuff, especially because we get this shot here of Hall of Nine inspiration from real worlds. And so if we can see like that something's inspired by like the terracotta horse, you know, or whatever, like something like that, then we could maybe guess, oh, maybe that was from Yi Chi or something. So that will be fun to dig into.
Yeah. And
Ryan Condal has like a whole podcast on props.
Yeah.
I wonder if he would ever talk about this in the future.
I bet he will.
And you know, and there's like the 5 or 7 minute like inside the episode that we get after each one. But they're also doing like the how the throne was built little
the house that
feature.
dragons built. And that's what I got.
Made one for this episode.
Yes,
yet?
that's what all these images I've been sharing of behind the scenes shots of these murals and everything. All of that has been from that. So I highly recommend.
But they didn't go into detail and explain each one to us.
No, they didn't go into detail and explain each one. So it leaves room for us to dig in ourselves.
All right, let's keep moving. The natural features of Driftmark are really beautiful too. We got the caves and the beach and the sunlight and everything that both Rhaenyra and Laenor are walking around, and then Laenor and Joffrey are out there together. It's really, really nice. Just a beautiful location. All sorts of great. Look at that one. Wow, that's just.
This is so
awesome.
Far my favorite shot in House of the Dragon.
Oh, nice.
I would say, like, it looks
the mist,
so.
The clouds, the sun, the beach,
it's
the water.
just
Yeah,
beautiful, beautiful moment there, and a great moment, like a significant conversation between them. Beyond that, not just a great shot, but a significant scene for 2 major characters.
So from this visit comes the decent proposal, the indecent proposal, and the really indecent proposal. The decent proposal is the actual upfront marriage here, Rhaenyra and Laenor, which is a good political match for a lot of reasons. Obviously, they're not a very good match in terms of orientation, but they both at first are like, yeah, you know, we can make this work. And it looks like it's headed in the right direction, right? It's like, yeah, we can both make the most of it. We can do our duty, but then just hang out with who we want to hang out with.
The geese and the ducks.
With the geese and the ducks, exactly. But it's just not meant to be, you know, and of course it's going to fall apart throughout the episode. There's a lot of the assumptions we discussed earlier, and both Corlys has some, as we alluded to, some overestimations about the situation. He says himself, did I overplay my hand? He's at least open to the idea that he made mistakes. He has more respect for his wife than most people in this culture do, and when she tells him he's wrong about things, he listens. At least he hears her. And here's a moment I was really wondering about. When Rhaenys comes and she's like, cousin, she like grabs his hand and shakes it. I think she knew what she was doing there. I think she was trying to show how unhealthy he was, or at least test him, because she's concerned about his health. Wants her husband to realize how close he is to death, and to keep that in mind with all the things that's happening. Like when he dies, she says straight up, she's like, look, when Rhaenyra's recession will be challenged, knives will come out. And so she, by grabbing his hand and saying, oh, I'm sorry, cousin, how's your health? She's drawing attention to how unhealthy he is and how soon his death will come, which I'm not sure she realizes her husband has taken note of that. So she wants to emphasize that, I think. Did any other interpretations on that?
I would like to just emphasize the amazing acting from Eve Best, because this is camp at its very best right here. Her entrance here, I have it on screen with her big grin and her the way she holds her arms. I don't know if I agree with your assessment on that, but like I wouldn't dislike it if that was the case. I really don't know if I agree with that, but either way, I
agree with what?
The idea that Rhaenys grabbed Viserys' hands, knowing that she was emphasizing to him his mortality. I'm not sure if I agree.
I thought it was almost the opposite. I thought that when she did it and he winced, she then asked, "Are you well? Not are you sick? Are you hurt? Is your hand okay? Are you well?" And he said, very. And I think that was their code to each other. I think really she was saying, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not. I think that there was this secret between them. How bad
is it really credible that people don't realize how unhealthy he is, though, at this point?
I mean, I still think she can realize.
He's keeping gloves on and keeping his arms covered.
But that's suspicious. Wearing gloves everywhere by itself is suspicious, though.
Yeah,
and Rhaenys is very observant. Like, she's like the most astute character we've seen in the entire series, I think.
Another
I think
thing
she could,
about that.
I don't know. I think she could have known, but still gotten caught up in the moment of like, I'm greeting him, and it's my cousin, maybe. And like she grabs his hand, and she's like, oh, and then like she has remembered, like I know that he's sick. Oh, this is more of that. This is like
you're already saying it's camp that she's already like overplaying how happy she is to see him.
I don't think camp necessarily means that she, like. I mean, that's her. I think that's her overplaying it, but that doesn't mean that she's overplaying it for manipulation.
Okay.
I guess
she might be overplaying it, but it might also be genuine.
Yeah. Like I think she is genuinely like in a pretty positive, happy mood, and
yeah, I'm real dubious of that because I think she doesn't want this marriage. I think she's like, look, we just tied ourselves to this war. I don't think she's happy to see Viserys at all because I think she knows exactly why he's there, and she doesn't want this.
I was gonna say, Aziz, that's another thing about this scene that I thought was a little unusual. Is it at the end of it all? I don't know, surprise is quite the right word, but she's like, you just got us in a bunch of trouble. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Have they not talked about this? Didn't she know this was coming? Like, so was she pretending to be happy when it first showed up? Was she genuinely surprised that he was there? Did she not know that he was showing up? I'm not sure. I had a few lingering questions around this scene. And I don't
remember they made a big point of it. Like, why aren't you here to greet the king? Like, there was word sent ahead that he would be coming. Else,
yeah, that makes sense, and unless it was kept secret from her, but that also seems difficult and unlikely. But
yeah. I mean, it's possible. It just doesn't really. Why? Like, why would you do that? Yeah. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, I think that it was a little bit of Rhaenys wanting to. Needle isn't the right word, but like them not greeting Viserys.
Oh yeah, that was
and then she comes in like, oh, look at how well I'm living. Like life is good on Driftmark. I'm happy. Like I think that's the level that she's like overplaying it or wanting to a little bit put him in his place.
Or there could be, again, I'm not sure if this is likely, but it's possible that Corlys did keep it secret from her so that he could wait inside and make the king come to him. Because remember, after the fact, she's like, oh man, he really had to belittle himself to come in here and beg like that. Maybe Corlys set it up to make him look smaller. Maybe if she would have been out.
She was saying the whole trip would made him look weak. It wasn't the coming inside. It was the whole coming at all.
Yeah,
that was what she was talking
about.
Yeah,
the actual him making this siege voyage.
But I do agree that their greeting was intentional. That they slighted him on purpose to put him down.
Maybe
it was a negotiating
tactic.
Maybe
push that farther. By herself being inside waiting.
They know they're about to have a marriage deal. They know they're about to be given a marriage offer, and they want to start off getting the upper hand in negotiations.
Like maybe she's testing how far he'll go. If he had stood outside and demanded that they come meet him rather than fine, let's go in. Maybe that is part
check
of the indication of his health and how.
That's a good way to like. It's like it's a nautical thing. They're doing a sound.
But yeah, I do expect that there was a letter exchanged between Lionel Strong and Corlys and Rhaenys in which he was like if we make this trip, you guys, you're amenable to this, right? Like this. I don't think they just did that out of nowhere.
They didn't just show up. Yeah, that's would have seen them coming miles away.
Yeah. They beyond that, the fact that they would have seen or sent a raven, and like yes, it's technically possible that they were like, we're coming to visit, and they didn't say anything. But I really think that there was
Corlys
something.
Didn't see Viserys' messengers come on that hilltop.
So let's talk about Laenor and Rhaenyra a little more, but their arrangement that, of course, doesn't end up working out. Now, it's important that, and some good detail work is done here to remind people that these two have known each other. This isn't like their first meeting. They grew up together. They're cousins. They both had Jaehaerys and Alysanne as great-grandparents. They have the same connection to Aegon the Conqueror, right? And so Rhaenyra knew that Laenor was gay. That was not a surprise to her either. We weren't sure about that going into this, whether that would be the case or not. And it looked so good for them. It's like, oh, wow, this is really going to work out. He goes and talks to Joffrey, and Joffrey's like, huh, she must have a lover too. He kind of figures it out. And it must be a specific person. Now, she's probably not just going around with a bunch of different people. That would be too hard to manage. That would be tricky. It's probably just one person. And Laenor's like, yeah, you're probably right. And Joffrey goes a little farther and is like, I'm going to figure out who it is. And he does. It's just the power of observation. As we said before, it was an assumption, although he was right. He did figure it out correctly. He's like, it must be that handsome one. And he probably watched like how they were looking at each other.
He was like, "It's the one Kingsguard without his helmet on."
Yeah, the
It's
one
like,
Kingsguard. Yeah, I know. Like he's not. He may not be the only young one too. Like the other Kingsguard may all be older.
Eric and Arik seem like they're there and
That's
young,
true.
but
They're not that old,
I think that they're there already.
That's a good point.
I did watch close trying to figure out what it was that clued him in, and I'm not sure about this. And also, it may have been reckless on his part to make. He might have been making a good guess, and he did present it in a way that said Criston was just oblivious. So what are you talking about, man? Like he didn't necessarily give anything away.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that Criston was the only one not looking at Rhaenyra. He made one glance when she was dancing with the other guy, and he's like, he couldn't emotionally handle watching that, and just looked away the whole rest.
Maybe
of the time.
Joffrey caught that, like that point,
right? And I think that's what Joffrey saw, that he was one. Everyone was watching her, right? All eyes were on her. She's the center of attention, except for Criston. He's looking away,
and he's just tense. And I mean, like again, I don't disagree with people who think it was a jump of Joffrey to make that. And that it was then a further jump for him to actually say something without confirming it. But I don't think it's impossible or unreasonable for Joffrey to have done that.
I totally agree. I think him figuring it out makes sense. He's an observer. It's something that Laurie's brought up. It's like people who aren't asked to speak get better at observing. Joffrey Valonmouth is not a royal. He's much lower rank than his lover.
How many people is Rhaenyra even around, or how many options are there for Rhaenyra's paramour for her lover?
Yeah, I mean, really? You're right. There's not many options. They've been seen together constantly. He may know that. He may have talked to other people off screen to get some information, but the looks that pass, I mean, there's just so much can be said. It's like he would never turn away like that if he didn't. Like that's the look of he uses the word sea struck. Like that is a dude who is definitely sea struck right there.
I just want to say we're censored here. I would say it if it was up to me, I will tweet it. You can see. I'll say it every day of my life to make up for Aziz having to censor us today.
See you next Tuesday. Touched is struck or whatever he said. It was very true.
But okay, sure. I guess we'll censor ourselves there. But no, he was struck then by the sea.
Yeah,
Joffrey was, because that's what Criston is.
He's like, that's what that looks like.
No, I'm saying that's what Criston is.
Oh yeah. And it's funny that his indecent proposal comes while they're at sea. The really indecent proposal. So Criston, of all the assumptions, Criston's might be the wildest. Like, sleep with me once, and we should run away together.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of people talking here in the chat about Criston, and so I think this is a fine time to just bring this to address our thoughts on this, right? Like we can just do it in the chat now. Yeah, it was a bad decision by Criston. I think that is clear.
Yes.
He wasn't logically minded. It wasn't like him saying, "Oh, this will solve everything now that Joffrey's been shut up, no one will know." This was oh my God, I'm having a mental breakdown. All I've been trained to do is fight when I'm like that's what he knows to do, is to fight. And so he just lets it out on Joffrey because he's just slowly imploding on the inside. And no, that doesn't do any good for Criston. It doesn't solve the solution of Criston thinking that everyone knows what's happened to him, right? Like, but that's not the point. Like, the point isn't that Criston is doing some logically minded thing.
Right. And he's also, like, putting it in his perspective, we already talked about how he might have thought he was being blackmailed. He might have thought he was being taunted. He also thought this whole thing was under wraps. And all of a sudden, this random guy knows that he slept with Rhaenyra.
After Alicent knows, too. To be clear, this is like not...
He's like, who else knows? Like, is everybody talking about me?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he's mortified.
Yeah, picture like you're at this wedding and like every person you look at, you're like, what if like that, like they're snickering about me? Like he's just slowly breaking down to the point where he's like, well, if I just kill him, then they'll know that I was, defending our honor. And that's the only honorable thing for me to do, is to say, look, you're lying. So like, that's what he does. But I don't think that it was at all, if Criston was in his right mind, that Criston would have done that. He was he was having just a complete breakdown.
He almost went and killed himself afterwards. Like he probably thought his life was already forfeit. He's like, all right, this secret's going to get out. They're going to kill me anyway.
Yeah, I think that
he
probably
was ready to die in front of Alicent.
Yes, he
right?
was.
He was like, please, I understand if you want to kill me. I ask you don't torture me, but I don't even have the right to ask that.
Yeah, like he was really giving up.
lost. Yes, and I think even the thing like going to run off with Rhaenyra wasn't quite even as much as he's in love with her.
Oh yeah,
or
I
thought
agree.
she would do it. He just doesn't know how to handle any piece of his life at this moment. His vows have been sullied.
Totally
the quests and mission of his life, any kind of legacy he thought he had, the honor of his family, like everything is just this swirl. And he wasn't necessarily enamored with Rhaenyra in the first place. She kind of, intentionally or not, used her position of power to seduce him, and now he just doesn't know how to deal with it, and he's trying to. And his first best idea, which isn't necessarily even smart, but he's trying to figure something out that he presents to her. And I want to point out in that moment that part of her shutting him down, if you will, was appealing to her own obligations.
Yeah.
She's not accounting for his obligations, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, hey, I had obligations too, and I abandoned them for you. And you were constantly complaining about your obligations. Hey, let's just both abandon our obligations and do this thing together. Isn't that what you want? She's like, that's not what I want at all, silly boy.
Yeah.
What do I do now?
She didn't even get it. She was like, wait, what are you? So he's like, you want to leave? Like, she didn't even understand.
She's
he
like,
was
for oranges in a ship. And he's like, no, not for oranges in a ship. Right?
Yeah. He's like, wait, you want me to go with you? Like, she was confused. Like, she didn't, like, the idea was completely alien to her. Like, wait, I go with you? Like, what?
Yeah, I think that was some of I think some of the best writing in the series so far was the scene with Criston and Rhaenyra, where he asks her to run away with him, and she just like basically stabs him in the heart by saying no, like for a bushel of oranges, as if that was the point of his question. But she herself is just as wounded by him even thinking to ask her to leave. Like, that is really an offensive thing. Yeah. And so she's like trying to deal with how to reject him, and like she starts to even hint at the prophecy when she says, well, when Aegon set this way, he started a path, and Criston just walks away, and so she might have had a good excuse for him. Although I think even without her knowing the prophecy, she wouldn't have run away. I think even you think back to episode 1, right, where she talked about wanting to fly away and eat cakes. Like, I think even then she was like, I want to have a vacation. I want to go do that, but I still want to come back and be the princess and eventually the heir. So
she did know the homework that Alicent was pestering her about, right?
Yeah, she still knew it. Yeah, she wanted to go. Yeah, she wanted to go flit about for a while, but ultimately she does want the responsibility, and she wants, like, I mean, she's been raised in this setting.
It was hurtful to her for him to assume that she might run off, but it wasn't crazy for him to propose that because she is constantly complaining about it.
Yeah.
And that's what I started to think in my mind, is that she had this extra layer of concern that he's oblivious to, which is this ice and fire prophecy. And maybe she was even about to tell him that, but he was also so hurt that he went off. And I made this point a lot, like, we can't be that surprised that these young people aren't perfectly managing their emotions. 30 and 40-year-olds don't perfectly manage all their emotions. You know what I mean? So why in a world with a 17-year-old and 20-year-old?
And then, of course, Corlys, like, kind of just makes it worse. Like, when he first pitches it to her, he doesn't say it, but then as he digs in, he's like, this is the only way for me to salvage our honor.
You mean Cole?
Criston Cole. I said Corlys. You're right. I hear it back. But no, Criston said this is the only way for us to recover our honor. Not, I'm in love with you and want to spend the rest of my life with you, but this is how we get our honor back. And
it's negative reinforcement.
And to be clear, it was about his honor, but it's about her honor too to him. Like, I don't want to just throw Criston under the boat, as it were. Like, you know, like I do think that he cares about her honor and his. Like, he cares about honor in general.
Some bad assumptions about how she views her honor. She's like, no, I'm totally cool with just having you as a side piece. That's fine for me.
Rhaenyra does not see that as very dishonorable. She doesn't. She thinks of that as her right as a Targaryen princess to do what she wants.
She thinks it's a totally fine compromise, given the rules are unfair, and this is a way for her to get around the unfair rules without flaunting them. And she thinks that's a reasonable.
But she doesn't consider that there's different rules for him. I wonder if it became public knowledge, and I don't know if Viserys or Alicent or Lionel or someone demanded, what's the name of the head of the Kingsguard right now?
Harold Westerling.
here at Westerling, if one of them like wanted to gild or execute or send him to the wall, if she put her foot down and said, no, I want to keep him as my protector and lover, would everyone be like, okay, fine, you can do that? I don't know how that would go down, you know?
And I mean, I think I was wondering, Rhaenyra has a lot of power. Is there a world where Rhaenyra is able to be like, okay, we're going to remove you from the Kingsguard and I'm going to get married to you? I don't think she would ever do that. I don't think it could work out. But the idea that she wouldn't even think about it or ask about you, like, is significant to me, I suppose. Again, it's not like he's a Lannister Kingsguard. He's a Cole Kingsguard, so there's another level of him being relatively common,
more dispensable,
compared to, like, again, if she'd been having this affair with a Jaime Lannister, maybe there is a world where they're able to make it so that no, this is actually her new partner. Like, I don't like, again, just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean that with Targaryen exceptionalism that they can't figure out a way to excuse a man from the Kingsguard to marry.
Although even with the Targaryen exceptionalism, the powers that be don't seem to think they're going to accept a woman as a ruler.
That's true.
So maybe they tenuously accept a woman as a ruler, but then also she's dating one of the Kingsguard?
Yeah,
they wouldn't,
no way.
Yeah, she can't do it all.
That just throws it off. Yeah, it's already chintzy, yeah.
You touched on it a little bit, Ashay, but I wanted to get back to the idea that Criston, like, when he confesses to Alicent, that he may already be wondering who knew, right? Because Alicent presented to him as it was a report that was made, that she's like, a rumor. Well, actually, a report, like, already, like, at least a couple, 3, 4 people might know. And then here comes this random dude at court. And he also knows. You can really see how he might have already felt paranoid. That was one of my thoughts. When Allison's like, okay, you can go. I'm like, man, he is not going to sleep well tonight. He's just got to be expecting to be arrested at any moment. Like every breathing moment of his life now, he feels like he's under the knife. And then here comes this guy at court saying, hey, buddy, I know your secret. and possibly a tacit threat with that too.
Yeah.
He might even on some level have thought he was protecting a princess by killing that guy. That guy might stir trouble or reveal her secret or something. Even if it's like an irrational justification in his mind, I can see that being part of him losing it there. He might have on some level thought he was protecting a princess.
All right, we got to move on. That's enough on Cole and Rhaenyra for now.
There's never enough on Cole and Rhaenyra.
So I guess I didn't actually get Sean's where you land on Cole after that. Are you
I want to still be on his side. I'm like, obviously I'm not glad he murdered somebody, but I think it's understandable what happened. And it keeps me more on his side when he seems willing to accept the results of his actions.
Okay.
Like, he's like, I screwed up in a way that's not even like some capital crime. I just like slept with the wrong person and
that is
got
a capital
pushed
crime
to do it.
By the way, that is a capital
well,
crime.
I guess in this world it is. Yes, in this world it is.
Yeah.
It's a victimless crime, I'll say.
Maybe it shouldn't be a capital crime, but it is.
Yeah. He accepted his fate. He was honest about it. He didn't want to lie to the queen. He didn't cower or beg or throw anyone under the bus. It's like, I did it. I'm sorry. I accept the death sentence, So, and then after that, when he, gets a reprieve of sorts, but he's still kind of spiraling psychologically out of control and kills someone, he's then like, well, I'm just going to kill myself now. Like, I deserve to die. Like, it's hard for me to think of him as a villain, right? He might not be a good person. I don't know if I'm rooting for him, but I don't think he's the antagonist of the show by any means.
Okay.
I still think. How many people has Corlys killed? How many of them got a trial? What about Laenor?
Yeah, Laenor. I'm sure Laenor has killed plenty in the Stepstones. Yes.
Right? Like these people have murdered or at least killed in battles that might be hard to justify. Soldiers that might have just been conscripted onto a ship and now they're just getting burned up by a dragon. They didn't have any control over this fate of theirs.
Can I know you're eager to move on, but I would like to address one thing, which is the fallout from this and how we think that'll be dealt with, which is, in my opinion, yes, and on the surface level, Criston doing this seems like some inexcusable thing, like, yeah, they should execute this Kingsguard or send him to the wall or something. But I think Criston will have 2 people on his side, because I think not obviously Alicent will be, but I feel like Rhaenyra will also. We might not see that conversation happen, but my picture of it is that Viserys is like, well, what the hell happened here? And Alicent and Rhaenyra both are like, say something in defense of Criston, and that's why he is not just summarily killed or sent to
I mean, I think
wall.
it's pretty easy, just like what Sean just said. With Alicent is now his protector. She wants him to be on her side. She needs allies. She sees him as someone. She just rescued him, and so she has whatever pull necessary. It's going to be her, I think.
But I still think that if it was Alicent alone, but Rhaenyra and Laenor were like, no, this was not cool, that wouldn't be enough. I don't think that would be enough. Like, I think the actual people whose weddings it's at, I don't think Laenor is cool with Criston, but I think in the immediate aftermath, Rhaenyra is going to be like, no, he was protecting me, and then they slowly, quickly fall apart. That is my thought, is that's the only way that this works, in my opinion, that Viserys does not punish him much more strictly, is through both Alicent and Rhaenyra saying something.
I did think a lot about just the details of how this played out in the moment. It may be that through this commotion, everyone there doesn't necessarily know who this guy that got beat up was. Everyone didn't necessarily witness when he assaulted Laenor, but he did punch
he did punch him,
bloody nose he came up with, but he just walked out. No one stopped him. No one asked him a question. They went on with the actual marriage without figuring out what happened with Criston first, or why Laenor was so emotionally distraught over this guy that got killed. I feel like there was a lot there that got glossed over.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Because the episode ended when it did, it hasn't had time to resolve it. I don't know if it got glossed over, it just hasn't happened yet.
I was hesitant to use that term because it seems
the episode ended
negative,
during the ceremony. Like, they weren't even out.
Right.
Well, it's still.
But then now we know we're jumping 10 years forward. So, how are they going to?
Well, yeah, and then that's right. But that's what I'm saying. If it's been glossed over, we'll see. We don't know if it's been glossed over yet.
Well, I don't think we'll ever really get the answer to what the conversation was post this that led to Criston not getting sent to the wall or being executed. I think we as the viewers need to fill in those blanks. And myself as a viewer, the only way that I can fill in that blank to feel satisfied with it is if it was more than one person speaking on behalf of Criston Cole. Maybe even Harold Westerling said something he's always been good.
I agree with you.
I think it's not just Alicent alone, I guess.
Yeah.
Alicent alone might be able to do it if she spoke on Criston's behalf and said something like, that man threatened me.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's a lot of ways it can be explained. I don't think we have to nail
people are really
it down.
into this in the chat, so I don't think we're wrong to take a good beat on this. To be, I know you're wanting us to rush through, but I think this is
I'm not trying to rush through. We just have a lot to get through.
But I would like to also. Damn it! Now,
I was going to say, I think we'll be filling this in this blank for years to come.
That's what I was going to say. Is that I think we'll see that Rhaenyra and Laenor's, what could have been a relatively decent relationship between them, will be much colder than it would have been because of this.
They might be further odds over
further at odds. Like, maybe it could have been relatively happy if he'd had his lover and she'd had hers, but she's going to have her lover, and Laenor is just going to be sad.
Maybe.
Or
maybe he'll find a new lover. I mean,
that's
who
true.
knows? Anyway, we'll see. We have a lot of questions built up, and you can certainly ask more. We're going to have a Q&A episode this Wednesday, so built up questions. If you haven't had one answered, well, that is when we'll get to it. We'll have a lot of things that we'll address then. One comment here, David So says, horses are very delicate creatures. If it was sudden movement from his hand, or maybe he smelled like dragon, and that caused it to react. That's a good idea, yeah.
And they made a point about the smell of dragons earlier, too.
Yeah, definitely. Several times, I think. Yeah. All right, so the confession. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this already, but Alicent tries to be mindful of her friend's honor and reputation. It's so funny how the act of beating around the bush and not mentioning certain people by name is what gives Criston Cole the opening to admit what he did, which is like, wait, she's like, wait, what? So I have a question for y'all. Does Alicent think that Rhaenyra hooked up with both of them, Damon and Criston? Or does this mean, okay, now she thinks only Criston, or does
I think she thinks both.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
It's both,
but you could say whatever you think, but I think both.
Yeah. What do you think, Sean?
I don't think she thinks both. I think she was piecing together there that's the way that Rhaenyra was able to lie to her face, if you will, because it wasn't a complete lie. That she did hook up with someone, but it wasn't Damon. That's what I think, but I'm not very confident about that.
Right on. You kind of see how Criston Cole and Alicent are more suited for each other. I don't mean romantically. I just mean like personality-wise, like sense of duty and like propriety, and like something is bad if it happened, not if people found out. Where Rhaenyra is more on the side of it's bad if people know, not that it happened. Right? That's kind of their different. One of the differences in their view of what they did. That Rhaenyra's like, well, as long as we keep this a secret, everything's fine. And Criston's like, no, we did this. There is no like secret or not. It's the shame is there. So they have that's part of why they can't find a chord. One of many reasons they can't find a chord on that. But Alicent is more of Criston Cole's mindset, I think.
I didn't even think of the quote from that last or a couple episodes ago when he was like, "The truth doesn't matter. Perception is what matters."
Yeah.
No, it might not be realistic to keep this a secret. It might not be realistic to stop the perception. Another thought I had too was I think that Rhaenyra or Alicent finding this out, it's almost worse, or maybe definitively worse, because it also includes the value of the vow of this Kingsguard. I think that she might have been happier to find out that she really had that Rhaenyra had really hooked up with Damon than to find out it was the Kingsguard. It's almost like a second layer of dishonesty that was happening, and a more serious, because there is a precedent established for Targaryens to marry, the age difference doesn't matter, all these different things. But one of the Kingsguard, like, is there a worse person for her to have, like, even just a random dude on the street would have been better?
Yeah, remember we mentioned Luca More Strong, right? I think it was last time, and how big a deal that was. And that wasn't even that long ago. It was like maybe 2 generations ago at most.
Yeah, and then, of course, Criston does bring up, or you could geld me.
Which is what happened to Luca More Strong. Yeah, that's probably who he was thinking of. He's like, oh, I'm going to have the fate of that guy. Yeah. And yeah, so that is interesting. You think that he might be pretty grateful to her for kind of saving his life. He was about to kill himself, and she showed up in the night. It was a pretty neat there, the night heart tree moment. That's the first time we get a heart tree moment at night, isn't it? And he's not wearing his cloak anymore. He's got his armor in his hand. He sets his sword down. He's
got his cloak in his hand too.
I wonder if it was very much like a harikiri, like a samurai ritual suicide.
Right.
They even like pull up their robe like that. There's like a ceremonial garb that then they have to pull up to expose their belly.
A lot of times they have someone there with them to end their suffering quickly. You stab yourself in the stomach and then your friend cuts your head off so you don't feel it. But he was just going to go hardcore, just straight up. They were just going to find him dead in front of the heart tree in the morning, like the old heart tree sacrifice, like he was offering himself to the werewood. But no.
He's probably going to continue to be a pawn of these power players' games, just a different power player now, Alicent instead of Rhaenyra.
Yeah, that's true. So Viserys' intent was 7 days of celebrations, but it only went 1 day. He wanted tournaments, feasting, and big wedding ceremony. This is just supposed to be the kickoff event. I think it's sort of a budget thing. Like,
who was the master of treasures? Who was Master Coin?
Yeah.
He's probably happy about
that. Yeah, Jason's brother.
Yeah, think how much money they just saved around, canceling all these.
Master Coin is Lyman Beesbury.
Oh, sorry, Lyman. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, Thailand is Master
Beesbury.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it's like, oh, we get to see. You're right. They get to save all this money. Like, cancel the 6 days of the other days. Yeah, like hopefully a lot of that stuff wasn't paid for already. But yeah, all those people showing up and just having to go back home, all the fancy arrivals, just turning right back around.
Yeah, there's Lyman sitting at the feast.
Yeah.
He's got a great dinner partner in Mellos.
Yeah, him and Mellos, like, me and you again, buddy.
Yeah.
They were quick to take off when the struggle started in the crowd. They're like, we're out of here.
We're too old
That
for
was
this.
a quick moment, but yeah.
So there were 3. He tried to you got to feel for Viserys a little bit here. He tried to keep the participants to a minimum. He didn't even invite all the families. He kept it down. And it's still, maybe because that would cause too many people that hate each other. I don't know. But it still happened. He still had 3 interruptions happen during this event. And they were progressively bigger interruptions. Damon was the small interruption. Like, he's the small one. He didn't really disturb things that much. This is his lightest presence in an episode yet, and he still like murdered someone, arguably, and did a lot of other stuff, and but still, he didn't cause the biggest scene even close. So he just shows up, and Viserys is like, "All right, I don't want to cause a scene, and I know that I don't want to cause a scene. You're capitalizing on my dislike of turmoil. So yeah, have a seat. Bring up a chair. Go ahead. Have a seat. Whatever. I didn't notice this, but he didn't stand up when Allison came into the room. Everyone else did, apparently. I saw someone on Twitter pointed that out. I was like, oh, really? That's funny. So he banters and flirts with Lena a bit. That's pretty cool. We talked about that briefly. It seems like set up, doesn't it? They certainly seem to be on equal footing in a lot of ways in terms of their standing and family and all that. And he later goes to speak with Rhaenyra, pulls her aside, and she taunts him. It's like, well, if you want me so bad, take me to Dragonstone and marry me like that. And she says it in High Valyrian, and it's working. Like, this is a man who can be taunted. You challenge him and say he's not enough, he will respond. And she knows how to push that button, and she's pushing it big time. He grabs her, and Viserys is watching. He's like, what is my brother doing to my daughter again?
Some people say there's not a lot of humor in House of the Dragon, and I disagree. I think every look on Viserys' face is just a constant humorous thing. So funny.
But the brawl breaks out before that goes any further, so that's kind of left hanging as a thread. And of course, before that, though, that's not part of Damon really interrupting the things. That's just other stuff he does during the proceedings. The second big interruption is fashionably late Alicent. Talk about putting the fashion in fashionably late. Really boss move here. Queen, this is her first time. Like, she's been queen for a while, but this is kind of her coming out as queen. She's like, I am the queen. And really proves it, shows it, and is like, everybody, all eyes on me. This may be my stepdaughter's wedding celebration, but all eyes are on me. And the dagger stare when she looks at Rhaenyra, boy, that was well done. She calls her stepdaughter, and Rhaenyra is so confused in that moment. She's like, why is she looking at me? What's going on here? She interrupted. Something's going on. She doesn't understand what's happened. Rhaenyra has no idea that Alicent knows about Criston. She has no idea, but she knows something's up. Something bad is up. Alicent is mad at her, and she doesn't know why. She's probably aware of the dress having some meaning. Sean, what was your reaction to this moment?
One, I think Rhaenyra at least suspects that she knows, that she's found something out. That was a take that I got from Rhaenyra's reaction to the, congratulations, stepdaughter. And Rhaenyra kind of turns, the camera even shifted focus. She's like, whoa, I think she knew she was in some sort of trouble there,
Yeah.
Even if it's merely Alicent kind of, I don't know how to say this, but like seizing hold of her role as queen, that by itself might feel like a threat to Rhaenyra, but she's got to spin in her mind a little bit about all the different things she's done wrong. She lied to her. She slept with the Kingsguard.
Which thing did she find out about? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Rhaenyra seems to be able to put it out of her mind pretty easily because she looks pretty genuinely like enjoying herself and happy in the dance and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. She gets back into it. She's like, well, I'll figure this out later, I guess.
Yeah.
Man, it happens a lot sooner than she thinks.
I did have another sort of subconscious realization when she showed up in that green dress that it's a good contrast because I feel like they've been making a point of putting her in these black and red dresses.
Yeah.
And I even remember a couple times thinking that they didn't seem like they quite fit right. And now I'm thinking, oh man, I wonder if they intentionally, maybe I'm reading too much into it, or maybe I don't know how dresses are supposed to fit. But I remember at least one time I felt like the dress looked more like a Halloween costume, just a generic black red dress that someone got that wasn't, it seems like she would have a dress tailored to fit her perfectly. Does that make sense? But since it didn't, and maybe they're trying to draw this contrast. It's like she's not quite fitting in as a Targaryen. She's still a Hightower. And here she is in this beautiful, perfectly cut green dress, making this statement that maybe Rhaenyra is not quite, I don't know if she would key into it, but clearly the Strongs and the Hightowers, and I think Viserys all recognize, well, she's showing up at the royal wedding wearing a green dress and not a black and red one.
The third big interruption, of course, was the actual brawl. That's a huge moment. Now, as we discussed before, we don't actually know exactly what happened in terms of how it started. We know Criston was upset. That's pretty straightforward. We don't know if Joffrey spoke to him a second time, or there was some other exchange, or another glance, or a look, or just something that set him off. We have no idea. That's very much in keeping with the ambiguity of Fire and Blood and how we don't always know how things started and how the sources in the world, when they write about this event, they're going to have to fill in the blanks. They don't know what happened. They could just say, we don't know what happened, but history books tend to not do that.
Yeah,
they try to weigh in.
When you're watching, you just hear a scream and you don't actually see what caused it to break out. So in my head, I was like, oh, did the fight just start because some random people started fighting? And no, I do, in retrospect, I think that the scream was Criston flipping out and turning on Joffrey, but it kept you wondering in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, my best guess is that the next person Criston Cole Joffrey whisper in the ear of, he's talking about me.
Yeah,
Screw this guy.
That's a good idea.
Smacked him over the head with the back of his sword, and he fell bloody, and a woman screamed, and he gets on top and starts smashing his face.
That's fits about the old ambiguity assumption thing that we're foisting on everyone here. Well, we're not foisting it; it's there. I mean,
it's unlikely that
what's happening.
I see someone else points out Terra Incognita says he might have seen Damon and Rhaenyra having their moment, and that might have been part of what he might have had other things that he's been seeing too that caused him to break down.
That's actually a really good point, because I don't think Criston fully understands what Alicent was talking about with Damon and Rhaenyra. She didn't get the whole thought out, but if he thought about that on his own and was like, wait a minute, how is this okay? This is, this. Yeah, I can see that upsetting him, and he may not have fully thought about that or been aware of it, and it may have been kind of thrown in his face. Interesting, yes. So, and how were other people involved? Like, there's some Lannister guys just slam Laenor on the table. How did that get going? Were the Lannister people upset with him for some reason? What else transpired? So there's definitely a lot of unseen, unaddressed aggression, but it does maybe tell you where things are falling down. A Lannister guy attacks a Velaryon in the wedding. Well, maybe the Lannisters are going to be on one side and and the Velaryons will be on the other. We already can see why the Lannisters might be opposed to the Velaryons. We've already have a Lannister took a Velaryon spot as master of ships. They were rejected to try and marry her. This guy's kind of a jerk too. And Lannisters, they're more about the whole old powers of Westeros, this following the Seven. They're maybe a little more likely to do things like the Hightowers do. You know what I mean? Given other factors that maybe even more aligns than it might normally. Again, Rhaenyra, though. Rhaenyra is not only maybe confused about what Alicent has been particularly upset with. What is going through her mind when this brawl breaks out? She's like, why did my lover who's mad at me, she doesn't know how far he's fallen away from her at this point. He doesn't know that he's gone to confess to Alicent. She's still in the dark about that. So she's like, wait, what is going on? Why is my new husband's lover being beat up by my lover? She's got to be very confused, but she has to know something happened. Something was communicated, some words passed. And any thoughts on what's going through her head in that moment when the brawl breaks out, or even a minute after?
I think at the moment it breaks out, I'm not sure she even knows who's involved.
Okay, that's true. Well, let's say once she realizes who it is, let's say. What do you think she thinks?
She might not realize it till the past been cleared and he's already dead in the ground, at which point a flurry of thoughts are probably going through her head, including, what's my future husband going to think about our agreement now that he doesn't get his piece of it, and is he going to be mad at me because the person is my lover? It's got to be...
The thoughts you're ascribing to Rhaenyra are quite selfish, I'll say. The idea that Rhaenyra's first thoughts are, what does this mean for me? And not, oh boy, this is terrible for my husband who's lost the love of his life. I feel like, yeah, Rhaenyra will have thought of those thoughts, but I feel like probably she's like, oh, that was I feel like she just, if she sees the gruesome face caved in, she's got to be like, oh, that is terrible looking and traumatic and all that. And I feel like she's got to be thinking just when you see the scene of her getting married to, when you see her and Laenor there together, she can tell that Laenor doesn't even kiss her on the lips.
He's crying still.
Yeah, he's crying during it. So I feel like I want to think that mostly Rhaenyra is just overcome with feeling sorrow on behalf of Laenor and his loss.
I'm pretty sure she also. I'm pretty sure there's that, but also I doubt there. It'd be hard for there not to be a lot of other thoughts in her mind as well. Like, does this ruin our arrangement? Because they just had their proposal about how to handle their marriage when they're not attracted to each other. Is that all blown up now? So she probably is at least somewhat thinking about herself, not selfishly necessarily, but like she couldn't not. It's such a big deal.
Even just processing the violence of the imagery, she just saw it's just a swirl of an incomprehensible number of different types of emotions and thoughts. And
at this point, she hasn't got to talk to Criston. She still doesn't know what the heck happened with him. Like, why did he go so berserk? So, I mean, she's probably can assume a few things. Like, well, he was mad at me on the boat. So, is this connected to that? Seems like
one detail that I appreciated from, I don't know, like a filmmaking perspective is that in the little shotgun wedding ceremony they end up having, her hair is a little disheveled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it both symbolizes that, one, we're in the wake of the moment, right? That you're kind of keeping the time connected, but also that she hasn't really pulled it together yet. She hasn't processed these thoughts or these happenings, and she's not in control, on and on. I think that it's really amazing how much you can convey just by having someone's hair a little disheveled.
Yeah.
In the book version of this, Criston Cole beats up Joffrey during the tournament portion of this, which they just didn't want to film a second tournament. Understandable, but even this show with its huge budget, 7 days of tourneys and feasts would be a bit much for them. So it's kind of it's more ambiguous because it isn't clear that Joffrey was a target. It was just he was mad, and this is who his opponent in the tournament was, and he took out his frustration on that guy. And because he didn't actually die right away, he died like 6 days later of his wounds. He was beaten so badly that, and so it's kind of worse. Laenor is like crying over him for 6 days as he's slowly dying. It's like, ugh, geez. But not a huge change in terms of the bottom line result there. Laenor is still distraught. The blood of his lover is still sitting there on the floor while he's getting married. The imagery, you're right, Sean. The imagery with the darkness and her hair's disheveled. He's crying. It's like, ooh, this is not.
I gotta say, I agree with people that I don't think that the wedding ceremony needed to happen in this room still. It's a big keep, and like, literally, as you see the shot here, the blood is all behind them on the floor. Like, there's no real reason to be in this room, in my opinion. It's just
there might be one reason.
What's the one reason?
The one reason is that Viserys is barely keeping it together. He literally collapses as soon as they finish the wedding ceremony.
Oh, that's a good point.
He might just do it now. Do it now before I pass out and lose control within the next 24 hours. Get the septum in here and do it. I
do agree that it's Viserys' call. They're like he just wants to get it over.
Do it. Yeah.
He's so disappointed that he's just like, all right, we just got to get this marriage done.
Yeah, I agree with that. Point. I still feel like just go to a side room, like just go to a room off to the side.
Clean
of
the blood up
like,
first.
Clean the blood up.
How hard is that?
Yeah. While someone's getting a septum, someone else clean the blood
up. There was enough
up.
time for Cole to go to the Godswood and then Alicent to go meet him later that night. So I don't know exactly the timing on that.
Yeah.
Like what conversations were had before the wedding ceremony and all that. And I don't think it's terribly important to know. Like you can come up with an idea in your head of how it could have worked, but
it's still very chaotic. Like everyone's going off, and like it's not like there's some police force there rounding people up. It's
but they cleared everyone out there, and so it was much later. And like Alicent, so my question is whether. It's unclear to me whether Alicent goes after this wedding ceremony and finds Criston, and that's what it's intercut with, or whether this ceremony is before. Like does Alicent go save Criston from killing himself after this ceremony or before this ceremony?
I'm pretty sure it's during.
I think during.
Well, Alicent is there.
Oh,
Alicent is there behind Rhaenyra.
I
can put it on the screen right here. There's Alicent next to Viserys.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which
so it has to be after then.
That's my thought, is that there's enough time for Alicent to leave and go find Criston at the Godswood and do this whole scene. There was enough time for them to sop up the blood. They removed the corpse. Like the body is gone. Everyone is cleared out. Like
maybe it was before, because
some amount of time has passed.
Yeah.
But they intercut it so that we really can't say for sure. But like, how long did it take Criston to get to the Godswood and then go kill and decide to kill himself? Like the timing of it, I'm not. I think you could choose to say either. Like I think we don't have to know the answer, and if it makes you feel better that Alicent did this before, then go with that, or vice versa, right? Like
they certainly showed it before, and
they showed it intercut during, clearly, like as part of the ceremony.
Well, no, I mean they started showing the tree before they started showing the ceremony. So, and if she's at both scenes, then that somewhat implies the tree scene happened first. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't. It's definitely not a sure thing.
Yeah, like there's a world in which she leaves the ceremony and goes and meets Criston there afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that Criston was there at the tree for a while praying before finally deciding to. And while he's there praying, they're having a wedding. Wedding's over. She quickly goes there.
Where is
maybe because she was going to go there anyway, right?
Yeah, she does go there. That is her
to.
spot, sort of. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't know that she
happened to be there
find
already.
Criston there, but she may have been looking for him. I wonder if she was looking for him. Because she knows he's guilty. Like, he admitted to her that he was guilty, and then he did that. She may have been able to piece it together. Like, okay, he's all this guilt, then he bludgeons this man. So she may have just been like, okay, he's really feeling guilty and suicidal, and that makes him my ally. Because I need allies, and I need people that hate Rhaenyra, and I need people that will fight for my children against hers and her family or whatever. And no better place to start than this guy. Great fighter that's got a lot to prove and is willing to die. Clearly, yeah, that's it's cynical, but pretty smart move by Alicent, really, if you're grading the quality of the maneuver.
Yeah, so Alicent goes and deals with that, and then is like, oh, wow, I should probably go check in on everything. Oh, I'm here just in time to actually see the wedding ceremony. And it's a small amount of people there. It's Lionel Strong, Viserys, Alicent, Rhaenyra, and Laenor, and then Corlys and Rhaenys, obviously. But that's really everyone that's in attendance.
I wonder if, like, the Lannisters and the rest of the Hightowers wake up the next day and they're like, yeah, okay, they already got married. What? They already got married? It's like, that was supposed to be in 6 days. Like, yeah, it's all. Just go home now.
It's like, damn, I commissioned the finest of outfits for this wedding. Like, here's my receipt.
Can I expense this? Will you pay me back for it?
Does the king still want this fancy spear I had made? No?
He's still, again, with the spear, Jason. Come on. So I do think it's kind of cool what Viserys has in mind here. It's getting ahead of himself a bit, but it's neat, and it fits with his character, this idea of a second age of dragons. He's obsessed with old Valyria. He loves history and of course prophecies too. So it's fitting that he would kind of aim for something like this. He refers to the first age of dragons as the age of Valyria. He's not talking about the first 100 years of Targaryen rule, though he does refer to that separately as the first century of their rule, and he's ushering the next century or whatever. But He thinks that uniting these two dragon rider houses could be a big part of his legacy, that it could really kick off a new era of peace and prosperity, even greater than they've already had, with more dragon riders spreading. The realm is growing in that sense. It's evolving. There's not just the Targaryens have dragons anymore. The Velaryons have 2 dragons, maybe 3. And at this point, that's never happened before. No house has had dragons except for the Targaryens in Westeros. Unless you want to maybe go back to super, super ancient history, like Empire of the Dawn stuff. But let's not count that for now, because it may not have even happened. So it is different. Like, so the realm is in a different situation. So Viserys combining that and hoping it kicks off a new scenario, a new ruling house, a new pairing, all these things, a new era, all these things. So that's what he thinks will be his defining moment, something that he's looking for. And his health. We've talked about how Rhaenys and Otto have noticed that he doesn't look like the kind of guy that's going to live a long life. He's no fool. He sees that as well. That's why he's thinking about his legacy. He's like, yeah, look at my arm. I don't look like a man who's going to be around a long time. And he collapses twice this episode, right? He falls over twice, at the beginning and at the end. That's kind of symbolic too. Like, that's the wedding that the second age of dragon kicks off with a wedding that he collapses at. Is that supposed to be foreshadowing for the success of his legacy here? It falls flat.
I was going to point out, in addition to Viserys, like the reason maybe why they had the wedding in that room right there, and I'm saying Viserys because he's about to collapse and he's barely holding together, so he just wants to get it done as quick as possible. But it's also not the first time Viserys has set something up that has pretty bad optics. It was pointed out at the tournament in the beginning, like maybe this moment of violence is not the best way to celebrate the new child being born.
Yeah, he keeps having festivities that backfire. Like, the tournament backfired horribly. His wife and son die. He was hoping it would be this big coming out party. Even the hunt backfired. Like, he goes to hunt the white stag, kills the brown stag, and his daughter upstages him. And there's all that other drama, like he's drunk in front of the fire, lamenting all his choices. It didn't go very well for him. And this wedding
being held down for him to kill it.
Yeah, it was so
the optics
awkward.
were all bad in every way. Same thing here.
Yeah, same thing here. Yeah, he just
and
has
they even have
luck.
a rat show up to nip at the blood, right?
Yeah, so it's like feasting on the corpse of this regime or whatever.
It's plagued or infested. The wedding is infested. Yeah,
that's a good lot of symbols there. Rats and blood. Rats looking for cheese, blood. Yeah, there's lots of things going on there. And he wants it to be a celebration that's remembered. He's like, this is a wedding big enough for the histories. Well, it's probably going to make the histories, but not for the reason he wants.
By the way, I'm sure I'm not the first person to come up with this, but I wonder, will this become the Green Wedding?
It's not in Fire and Blood. It doesn't actually have a nickname like that.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, there's a greens and blacks tourney. So, like, yeah, I have seen people calling it the Green Wedding or other terms for it. Nothing is called to me personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to call it either.
If there's another name for it, it should be the Powder Keg Wedding. That was the thought that I had. I wrote it in my notes. Like, as we're going through the wedding, like every step of the way is just a new scenario about to explode,
to me,
and it's like every scene there was like 8 of them, and like there's no way this is going to go over smoothly. Something's going to blow up and it might trigger a bunch of other explosions.
To me, the other significant things of the wedding were the drums, the music going on, and the dragon dance. So if I was to try to think of a name for it, I might be inspired by those, like the actual dance of the dragon. I don't know, without thinking about it too much, but those are the other things that stand up in addition to the green dress.
That's pretty good.
I did want to point out another, aesthetic, another filmmaking aspect that they've done this several times through the show. When you have a moment of action or turmoil, that suddenly all the background noise drowns out. All the noise of the crowd and the guards and the clanking and the feast and when he's like punching Joffrey on the ground, and it's suddenly all that background noise faded away and the music started to creep in.
Yeah,
to me, powerfully done.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for the film work for this and how it emphasized the tension of the scene itself. They talk about it a bit in the House the Dragons Built featurettes. I won't get into it too much, but just talking about little things like the type of lenses that they chose to use for certain scenes, using a long lens versus like the kind of more of like the really close-up lens for like when Criston was like dissociating and like freaking out, versus like showing it from like everyone's perspective, doing like a wider lens. So there's a lot of work that went into making it feel really intense and uncomfortable, and like something is going, like a powder keg, like you're saying, Sean, like something's about to explode. And I think that you feel that the whole way through, like something, and in addition to the fact that it's a Game of Thrones wedding, and so things often go wrong at a Game of Thrones wedding, so like the audience is already inclined to expect something bad to happen, and then you have these like drums beating the whole time, and like this like weird like feverish sense to everything going on, and like this weird dance that they're doing. It's like, as they compared it to like prehistoric birds or like dinosaurs, like it's like a dragon dance is where they took the inspiration. So like you get that sense that, and I could really put myself into Criston's shoes of like his just imploding. Like I can see.
I was gonna say that as the scene was happening, I'm like, man, this whole wedding is like a powder keg. And then it got to Joffrey talking to Criston, like, Criston's a powder keg all by himself. Yeah, and sure enough,
Joffrey is bringing open flame near that powder keg. It's always another wedding ruined by a dead Joffrey. Like, this is, come on, Joffreys. You'll know, like, if there's another wedding and there's a Joffrey present, just keep your eye on the Joffrey. At least this time, we know for sure who killed the Joffrey.
Yeah.
But we don't entirely know why, just like the other one. It was like, well, what's the motivation for killing that? The first Joffrey death, it was the opposite. We know for sure why they wanted him gone, but we don't, it's ambiguous who killed him, at least to the characters in the world. So let's see. It's super ominous, the fact that he's trying to kick in the second age of dragons with like no one's witnessing it. They're just, these few families are left and just the rats and the darkness. Like, yeah, this is good way to herald in this new era. Is it a new era of darkness? Is that what we're supposed to see here? I don't know. You were talking about the music there. It was a really, really good take. The music in general was awesome. There were it needs more analysis. There was maybe some bringing back of old themes from related to other houses.
Yeah, as you see, when we get all these different houses introduced, House Hightower and House Lannister, you might imagine that there might be some of the motifs on display there.
But did you catch when the Bodyguard started playing?
What?
And
I will always love you.
Yeah, I mean, one nod from Lionel Strong, and Breakbones just went into bodyguard mode and just started beating down, shoving people away, scoops her up over his arms, and carries her right out. Like, that's pretty heroic, man. Like, just one nod to activate. That's all it takes.
I did want to make sure we hit that that Lionel's between his two sons, that's a good team.
He's got the brains and the brawn.
Lionel and Harwin both had an awareness of what was going on there, which I think is key, and a lot of people don't. Right?
His dad was already looking to his dad like, "Dad, can I?" And he's like,
"Yeah,
no.
Trouble? Should I do something? Yes, you should do something."
I saw a funny tweet.
Thanks, Dad.
Looking to each other for support. Yeah.
I saw a funny tweet that was like, Lionel has the ultimate power when he can just go activate large sun.
And large sun was waiting to be like, "Come on, Dad, activate me." He was waiting for it.
So far, they don't seem to be as sinister as the Lannisters, but it is almost like Tywin in the Mountain. He just has this tool at hand that you have to account for, whatever else is going on.
Whereas I see it as like the dynamic of the Jaime and the Tyrion. If you're comparing it to the Lannisters and the Strongs, it's the similar dynamic. I mean, obviously a little bit different there.
I like it. Yeah. Also consider the mirroring of him carrying Rhaenyra out as Alicent rescues Criston Cole from himself. Not long after. It's kind of a role reversal there, where the big burly protector saves the woman, where the woman saves the burly protector in Alicent's case. So that's kind of neat.
I don't know if anyone's calling Criston burly.
Okay, he's strong.
Yeah, he's
not
by
lowercase s. So you do start to see some of these factions forming, like Harwin and Lionel are clearly backing Viserys. Larys is a little more of a wild card at this point, but he's part of that family.
I'll say they did a good job at having the Hightowers in their green and then Alicent in her green stand out. But this is a case where I get the ambiance, the color graders were going for, but if you've been listening to our channel for a long time, I'm a little critical about the color grading. I think they lean a little too in. So far, this show at least has not had the Game of Thrones issue of if you're in the South, it's orange, and if you're in the North, it's blue. That hasn't been such a hard, fast rule, but I did feel like the glory and splendor of all these costumes did not come through as clearly as when I watched the House the Dragons Built featurette, and you see it without this like heavy color grading where everything just has this like murky yellowy green tint. And when that's the point, like, again, they're doing that for a reason. It's not like they messed up and color graded it a way they didn't want to. They wanted to make it look like this and to give it this look. For me personally, I would like to see a little bit more of the colors come through. But her green did still stand out, even when everything was that murky, yellowy green color. Like, Alicent still stood out in her green dress.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, on the other side, on that side, presumably the Velaryons, even though, Ashea, as you said, there may be some problems with Laenor and Rhaenyra's relationship now. We'll see about that. Ostensibly, they're on the same side. The green faction looks to be Hightowers with Alicent. Obviously, maybe the Lannisters are taking that side. At least you might guess that at this point. Criston Cole is pretty squarely on that side now, it looks like.
The Strongs are split.
The Strongs might be split.
I guess.
Larys is not as clear at this point, but he certainly seems to be making friends with Alicent. It's not clear why. But yeah, he's certainly making those inroads. No doubt about it. Damon, still a bit of a wild card. He's flirting with Laena, who's on the Velaryon side, and he wants Rhaenyra, so he certainly doesn't have friends on the green side at this point, so that does seem to be more straightforward, at least as far as that goes. But to be clear, he's not really on anyone's side other than his own, I think you could say. But that side also has all the dragons, which certainly has to bother someone like Alicent and Otto. But they do have Targaryen children. Alicent has 2 Targaryen children, one over and over to point out how much he looks like his dad and how his name is Aegon.
Aegon the Conqueror, babe. Get it
Aegon the
right.
Conqueror, babe.
That's his nickname for good, right? He's going to be 60 years old, like the Conqueror, babe.
He's still the Conqueror, babe. Yeah, that's his nickname.
Oh, he's
So-
pretty babely.
Clearly, dragons could change this picture quite a bit. Is he going to get a dragon? Is his sister going to get a dragon? Will there be more of them? Will there be more kids from Alicent? Entirely possible. You might not think that given Viserys' health at this point, but we'll see. So that's something that definitely needs to be accounted for. Alicent's certainly aware of the weakness of her side in that regard. They need dragons. And if the Velaryons have dragons, why not the Hightowers? Why not? I mean, her kids are Targaryen first, not Hightower first. They have the name Targaryen, and they have the Targaryen blood, and Aegon and Helena.
Yeah.
They have Targaryen names. So
Yeah.
yes, she's a mother of dragons, but they have the name Targaryen.
Yeah, I
so
do
that's pretty
wonder
important.
how much that has been, like, has there been a cradle egg for her baby? Like, we just haven't seen a lot of Alicent raising her babies. How much contemplation has she given to, like, no, like, I have Targaryen children and they're going to ride dragons?
Is she open to an incest marriage or no? I mean, you think someone who's down with the Seven wouldn't be, but circumstances are changing. She maybe can't have everything she wants the way she wants. We'll see. What her father's influence and her uncle's influence may as well be important. They may have some say or some suggestions in that regard. Keep them in mind, of course.
Yeah. My mind is definitely spinning about like who might fall on what side. If again, I don't fully. I had this vague awareness. It's starting to become more clear to me now that there is this green and black faction, and in green, I'm assuming is Hightowers and their allies, and I guess black is Targaryen and their allies. But I can imagine someone like, and I always want to make sure I say his name right, Laenor. That's the new king consort.
Yeah.
Laenor. Like, he might be mad enough about his lover having been killed by Criston Cole and if he's aligned with Alicent, then Laenor might be aligned against Alicent.
Yeah.
But like Shay, you were hinting at, what if Rhaenyra also supports Criston Cole? Would that
Briefly, I don't think for the long term.
Be upset with his own wife over that? Yeah.
To be clear, I think Rhaenyra will be like, no, that was bad. But like in the immediate, like, 10 minutes after this, Rhaenyra does not know what, like, to be clear, I think like what for one night only, Rhaenyra sides with Criston, and then she realizes, but like in the immediate
aftermath. But it might only
aftermath,
take one night to set a path where he stays on the King's Guard. Does he stay her personal guard? You know, how do they interact on a day-to-day basis? There's like a lot of, I don't know.
I guess my question for you, Sean, is necessarily like, we're talking about like who's going to side with the blacks and the greens. We've met some other houses now that we haven't even talked about. Like, again, you saw Rhaenyra went to Storm's End and has seen the Baratheons. We know the Baratheons are related to Rhaenyra. Like, do you have a take on what
Brackens in the Blackwoods?
Yeah, do you have a take on the Brackens and the Blackwoods, who they might side with? Not to take too long with it, but an immediate thought, like Baratheon, black or green? No, unclear.
Baratheon, black or green? I'm gonna say black. The thing is, I think most of my default answers are going to be black.
Okay.
Which makes it, and if the blacks have like all the navy and all the dragons, well, then how is there even a conflict? So there's got to be something else to it.
Okay.
That's
a good point. Cool. Yeah. And the Baratheons guessing black makes sense because they're related to Rhaenys. Rhaenys' mother was a Baratheon. Yeah. So
they're also nearby.
They are nearby, right? And they swore, like you saw Baratheon sitting with Rhaenyra and helping her with the whole marriage cattle show thing. So yeah, I mean, but there's so many. Let's not forget too. There's so many houses just unaccounted for. Like there's a lot. Like this is the whole world of Westeros.
The Lannisters are another one.
Lannisters, the Vale. We just saw the Vale get sort of involved a little bit. Maybe that portrait. Maybe that foreshadows more involvement. The Starks. I mean, there's some pretty big players that.
Yeah.
Ironborn, like they've got a fleet. Like that's a whole other fleet that could be relevant.
Yeah. So you might imagine that if the Greens need a fleet, that they might be like, oh, well, we need to make nice with someone who has a fleet.
Yeah, there's the Tyrells, the Dorne is not part of the realm at this point, but they're still relevant. They still have an army and a navy and money.
They could still harry the Reach or the Stormlands even without getting involved officially. They would still just be like, oh, this is our chance to raid.
That doesn't even count other things that I don't think are likely, but they have made Bravos, and the Triarchs. They're part of the story. There was just the threat of a marriage of one of the Valerians to a Bravosi princess or whatever was like enough to change the political maneuverings in King's Landing. So they make sense. Might also get involved with the war.
You're totally right. That's 4 of the free cities mentioned already that have already played a role or at least some small role or a peripheral role, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and there's other free cities that could get involved as well. But Qohor and Norvas have been involved as well, but only in supplying new tapestries. So we'll say that doesn't count. Let's talk about a few random miscellaneous bits, some callbacks, some references, some small mentions, some extra questions that we haven't yet gotten to. Wanted to call attention to the Criston Cole Rhaenyra parallels to Lyness and Jorah. A little similar there, maybe a little vaguely similar. And Dany, you got to throw Dany in the mix too, because Lyness Hightower goes to marry Jorah, and she becomes very unhappy with this, like, married to this lower station guy living in this remote island when she's used to living in Old Town. And then Jorah tries to get Dany to run off with him instead of doing her whole Mother of Dragons, all that business. And she's like, yeah, I don't know about that, man. So he doesn't, flip out on her like Criston Cole, because it's not the same situation where there's this Kingsguard thing and they have to keep up appearances. They're in Essos already when Jorah makes this proposal. They're already, free from those judgments.
Jorah's also a little bit more, I don't know, mature and cosmopolitan or whatever at this point in his life.
Yeah, he knows more. Yeah, he's
22-year-old Jorah might have acted differently than 42-year-old.
22-year-old Jorah is the one that married Lyness, right? That's when he was about that age, I think, when that happened, or maybe he was a little older, but still, he's learned a bit since then. Also,
maybe not enough.
Yeah, not enough. Definitely not enough. Definitely not enough. Also, some people noticed the Sandor Sansa vibes with Rhaenyra and Harwin Strong. Carrying her out of the riot. It's a riot. A brawl has broken out, and this big man kind of busts through and just plows his way through the crowd and carries the girl away. No brutal murders after that, but there's. I'm sure that'll happen. We'll see that later. We have. The statues in the throne room. We have yet to get really good pictures of that, but I really they keep coming up.
A good shot of
they
it
look
for
super
y'all.
Cool. Yeah, I guess
behind the scenes.
You got the four
in
kings.
One of the House That Dragons Built episodes, they did feature them.
Yeah, that's why I'm
bit.
showing it a picture of them from there, and the fact that they're not completed. One of them is going to be Viserys, this unfinished one.
Yeah, so that's important. And talk about part of his legacy. That should be I would expect that to be a plot point relating to that whole thing, like how will they portray him in his carving? What will his deeds be? Assuming there's pictures or pictographs or whatever, something like that.
It's got to keep it fresh in his mind too. It's like looming over him in the throne room, like his potential legacy, what it's going to be. You can see why it'd be on his mind anyway. But beyond that, there's this constant, huge visual reminder to him.
Rhea taunting Damon into finishing her off so she doesn't have to starve to death while paralyzed is a little similar. It reminds me of the sergeant who's about to be burned at the stake by Stannis and Melisandre, who taunts what's his name? The one nasty knight with the pig sigil.
Oh,
anyway.
Suggs,
yeah. Taunts Suggs into killing him, kind of cutting his throat. And you're like, well, how is that a win? It's like, well, he was going to be burned at the stake. So yes, having your throat cut is definitely an improvement over being burned at the stake. So yeah, it reminded me of that, because that's what she was doing. She taunted him to make sure she finished him off, or he finished her off. Fire and Blood, a quote there. There's a quote that people noticed the coolness between Rhaenyra and Criston Cole. This is kind of done in the opposite way. I think what people would have noticed was how close they were all the time, and now maybe that comes a contrast. And I don't know if since we're having a time jump, there won't be time for people to notice the coolness. They'll just not be together anymore, and it'll be more. This was more of a quick result rather than a slow burn, I think. Remember back in episode 3? Do you remember who pulled Damon off of the messenger he was beating to death? It was Joffrey. And now Joffrey's beaten. To death. No one pulled Damon. No one pulled Criston off of him.
Yeah.
No one. That dude wasn't there to return the favor. That guy he was too busy rattling off titles to save anyone.
It makes sense Joffrey would be there though, because he was there with Laenor.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he was there.
His nickname also is Knight of Kisses in the books. We also aren't given a reason for that, but which is a lot. He says that he's like, I don't know why people call me that, but
I'm gonna guess that Joffrey kissed a lot of people.
Maybe
before Laenor, obviously.
Of course, the Soiled Knight chapter, Aris Oakhart in A Feast for Crows.
Yeah, Criston literally says, I've soiled my white cloak. Yeah, he's very, very clear reference.
If you were to reread A Song of Ice and Fire right now, or rewatch Game of Thrones, you would get a lot of Dance of the Dragon spoilers.
Yeah.
Beware. Lots of them. Criston Cole, Rhaenyra, all that stuff gets mentioned. Yeah, they get a lot of these characters. Yeah, Damon, a bunch of these characters, their names pop up here and there. Yeah. Yep. Maybe hold off on any rereads if you're trying to stay unsullied. It probably didn't mean a whole lot at the time when you read just random names. Like, I don't know who that is, but it would certainly register this time. Fire and Blood. In Fire and Blood, Mushroom says Damon calls Laena almost as pretty as her brother, which
is what Damon says. So Mushroom was right there, at the very least. And we did have a dwarf at the wedding, which we haven't referenced. And I don't know that I think this is meant to be Mushroom, but it's meant to make us think of Mushroom for sure.
Yeah.
And the fact that, maybe this is Mushroom. I don't know.
He looks a little Lannister-ish, doesn't he, with that long golden hair? Big beard. He kind of looks a little like Jason.
Even if it is Mushroom, they might not continue to feature him through the show. I guess they might, but
but either way. But the nice thing here is that again, you can choose to believe, this was Mushroom, and he's sometimes playing music around, and he's seen different things happen, and you can fill in the blanks yourself without us seeing this guy ever again. You can choose to believe that he's been around. In other words.
So again, just sticking with Jason for a minute. It's so funny to me how unfunny he is, given that, like, Tywin, Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion are all funny. They all have great comedic lines, and this guy is just really not funny, but he thinks he's funny.
He's funny to me.
He's funny because he's not funny.
Exactly. Yeah. He does make me laugh, but I'm laughing at him, not
laughing at him, not with him.
Totally. The line about preferring goose versus duck and all that's kind of from Fire and Blood too. Grandmaster Mellos, when they bring up Laenor's orientation, because this is negotiated at the Small Council. It's open. It's not a secret in the books that Laenor is gay either. It's just something people know about him. And they're like, oh, maybe that's a problem. They bring that up. It's like, okay, this everything about this match is great, except maybe Laenor isn't going to have kids with Rhaenyra. Maybe that's a problem. And Mellos is like, I don't like fish, but if fish is served, I eat it. It's like, I don't know if that's really the right metaphor there, Mellos.
I think it's the right metaphor, specifically fish, in this case. But
floppy fish.
Yeah.
So
you
different
don't
kind
like
of fish.
bananas, but if a banana is served to you, would you eat it?
No.
I think you would if you were starving, though.
Okay, yes. If I was starving, I would
you would
choke
eat
it
the
down.
banana. Yeah, you
What if you were thirsty?
No, I would not. I would not drink the banana. So I do need to remind everybody that bananas are feces from Satan. That's why I don't like them. So it's very rational that I don't like them. So
he's wrong. 2 out of 3 of History of Westeros is in favor of bananas. So thus we can say History of Westeros is in favor of bananas.
What? I quit. Yeah, y'all mentioned the musicians a minute ago in talking about the maybe mushroom, the proto mushroom there. The music was so good. Yeah, the way they incorporated like in-world music, it's different from the theme music that's playing behind. This was in-world music that's very fitting. It felt like Westeros music, but it also felt like music from a different era, which it is. It's not the same era as Game of Thrones. It's 200 years earlier.
And they did have to provide music and have music for the dance when that was happening and for the actors. So on set, they did actually have music playing, and some of the actors were like, it really added to this like real and eerie and tense feeling.
Perhaps my favorite catch, this wasn't by me, it was a hat tip to Maddie, who runs the Girls Gone Canon Discord and has written some great stuff on A Song of Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon. They say that the Bravos reference of a plant from Bravos growing in the garden, which Lars uses as his metaphor to talk about people being out of place and finding their way, it could also be interpreted as a finger to people who don't believe lemon trees can grow in Bravos, even though there's plenty of evidence for it against the Dany theories there. So that could work as a little like, see, lemon trees can grow in Bravos. More evidence. So if you know, you know. Yeah, it's one of those.
I'm too unsullied to know.
Yeah. Yep. One day you'll get there. You'll see what all the brouhaha is about. It's a theory as sour as the lemons on which it's based. So who else are we saying goodbye to? We're saying goodbye to Millie Alcock, Emily Carey, Theo Nate, that's Laenor, Savannah Steyn, who is, or Stein, I don't know how to say it, Steyn, that's Lena. Definitely didn't get to see enough of her. R.I.P. to Joffrey Lonmouth, that's Solly McLeod. Obviously, he's gone too. We won't be seeing any more.
Yeah, I just want to take a moment to shout that out, to shout that death out in particular, because I just want to just make a statement about it, because I get that people are tired of seeing queer death on screen, but I just want to emphasize this is a show where everyone dies, including the gay people. It isn't to me, this is not a bury your gays trope when just everyone is gonna, so many people are gonna die. But I get why people are on edge about the idea of oh, this is a gay character that was introduced and he just is killed. So I just wanted to take
a non-gay character was introduced and killed.
Exactly,
also, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Rhea Royce. So I.
Well, she may have been gay. It's possible.
Yeah, she may have been gay
we
too.
don't actually know.
You're right. You're right. But still, I get it. If you feel that way, your feelings are valid. I hope it's not enough for you to stop the show, because we are, I think, going to get other canon queer characters eventually who aren't just going to be killed, and some who will be killed too, because mostly people die here. And
he wasn't killed for being gay. I don't think people think that.
No,
they
don't think that he was killed for being gay, but it does speak to there's a certain level of just being tired of seeing gay people constantly killed on screen. Their tolerance is low for that because of other media.
Right on.
But again, I think this is not a bury your gays example. This is just yet another person in this world who's died personally. But I don't want to invalidate if you were very unhappy with this. I think there is an argument to be made that there should be more time spent on Laenor's pain over this, and I don't think that's the chance of that is gone. We'll cut to 10 years later, and maybe Laenor is still upset about
maybe
just
he'll
because
name one of his kids after.
Yeah, but still the point remains that just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean they're not going to still do some service to this relationship, or that they'll have another chance to do more with queer relationships.
Well said.
Anyways, but R.I.P. to Joffrey. I know people think you were smarmy, but I think you were just confident.
Yeah.
I people really don't like Joffrey Lonmouth. I've seen a lot of really negative comments about him being too cocky, too confident, smarmy, or smug.
Oh well, yeah. Okay. Any last takes, y'all? Shea, any last things to say? Sean, anything we missed or that you wanted to address?
We did get a super chat from Karen Sita, a banana emoji.
Aw. All right, that one's for you two, not for me. Thank you, Karen Sita. I appreciate it anyway. I'll take any flavor super chat, even though, because I don't actually eat those. Yeah. So, of course, again, we'll be here Wednesday for a Q&A. It will be a spoiler Q&A, so keep that in mind. We may decide to schedule a non-spoiler Q&A if there's demand for that right now. I think the demand is mostly for a spoiler-filled Q&A, but y'all weigh in with that if you feel differently.
Yeah, so yes, Wednesday, before the jump, spoilers go. It just seems like if we're going to let you guys ask questions, we should have all spoilers. So weird.
Yeah. Were there any other actors I missed that we're not going to see again? I don't think so. I mean, there's other ones that have already moved on.
Yeah, other ones that have already moved on.
I mean, yeah, I guess we should say...
Baby Aegon and Helena.
I forgot to say, what's her name? Rachel Redford. Yeah, that's Rhea Royce's. It's so confusing. All with R's. Rhea Royce of Runestone, played by Rachel Redfort or Redman. Redfort's the name in the Vale. Redman. Wait, I forget her name. I've already forgotten her name. Anyway.
What? Who? Wait, what? What'd you say?
Rhea. The actress's name.
Oh yeah. Rachel Redford.
Rachel Redford. Yeah, that's it.
Which is it's easy for me to remember because there's a House Redford in the show in the series.
That's what I was just saying, and I thought maybe I was wrong because I'm like, wait,
it is.
But it's the same name.
What about the? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What about the spy, the little kid that was a spy? If they're going to jump forward,
Oh, that's hilarious.
major release. Will he still be a character? Or will you get a
That's too
replacement
funny.
actor?
Yeah, you have to. All the little birds grow up and
I'm
graduate.
sorry,
to
they're little worms
big
in
birds.
this show.
Little big worm. Yeah.
No, they're little
Yeah.
worms.
Big worm. He grows up to be on that movie Friday, right? Big worm. Big perm. Yeah, that's what he grows up to move to. Where is that? Is that South Central? I don't know where that takes place. It's in some hood. I don't know which one. I also mentioned our synopsis. Make sure you check out that.
That'll
Good
be
way
out
to
later.
keep everything straight. Yes. And of course, our Dance of the Dragon series with Radio Westeros is a great way to dive into the book version of this. 4 episodes are out as of now. The 5th one is pretty soon to be coming out. Thanks to y'all who attended live. If you're catching this on replay on, say, YouTube or on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon, appreciate that as well. Thank you to Michael Klarfeld and Bran Winslow for our video stuff. Thank you, and for our music as well. Thank you to Kevin MacLeod and Joey Townsend and Jesse Koval for all that. Thank you to our Patreon subscribers and our Spotify subscribers for being loyal, regular supporters of the show. You mean a lot to us. It's so cool to have you all on our side. We'll be back on Saturday as well as Wednesday. As I said, our usual Saturday stream, the Wednesday Q&A, and of course back next Monday with Sean for another spoiler-free review after the time jump for episode 6. Do we know what episode 6 is called yet?
We do, but I forgot.
Okay,
so.
well,
we do know. People could Google it and find out, but I personally forgot. Oh no, is it the princess and the queen? No, I don't know. I don't remember after all.
Anyway, check out our friends Direwolf City tonight. They were on as guests this Saturday, and of course their regular streams are at 8:30 on Mondays, so it's about that time.
Yeah.
Check out Radio Westeros on Tuesdays, and we'll see you all again soon for more coverage of House of the Dragon. Until then, you know what to do. Valar reread us and Valar rewatch us, but watch out for spoilers.